Hi guys, it's me, Chaz HD, and welcome to race day in Sao Paulo, Brazil. One of the most exciting race days on a Formula One calendar. It is usually one of the best Grand Prix of a Formula One season, and today could be no different. We have such a mixed up, exciting looking grid for this race that I'd be amazed if we don't get a lot of overtaking and wheel-to-wheel battles, whether it's dry or wet. And in regards to the forecast, I did just look at the forecast in the last 10 minutes, and the chance of rain has increased compared to yesterday in terms of the forecast for today. But it still looks like it will be an overcast, dry race. But there is, I think, a 40 to 50% chance of rain during the race. So maybe a couple sprinkling showers will just make this race even more exciting than it possibly will be. But yeah, such a mixed up grid. Qualifying yesterday was so exciting. It felt like the whole field had equal cars. It was that competitive throughout the entire field. And yeah, absolutely brilliant it was to cover that yesterday. But now it is on to the race, and this race is absolutely crucial for the Drivers' World Championship. And as I said in my stream yesterday, I have a good feeling coming into this Grand Prix that this Grand Prix will pretty much decide who wins the World Championship in terms of whoever comes out on top out of Lando Norris, Oscar Piastri, Max Verstappen. And I absolutely stick by that. Whoever comes out on top today out of those three, I think goes on to win the Drivers' World Championship. And that's why today, especially for those three drivers, is so important, because this is a big race and a hard race to win. And if you can win it, then it gives you such, not just confidence, but momentum going into those final three races that we have, of course, after today. So this is a massive one for the championship. And looking at the starting grid, I think we're going to have probably only two title contenders remaining after today. But yeah, cannot wait to see what goes down today in Brazil. As you can see, we are just under 2 hours away from the beginning of the Sao Paulo Grand Prix. Cannot wait for it. Hope you guys are well. Obviously, we covered qualifying yesterday, but if you haven't joined us since Mexico, great to see you. Hopefully you're doing well, no matter what time zone or what part of the world you're from. I hope you're all doing as well as possible. And I hope you'll be joining me tonight in watching along and enjoying the Sao Paulo Grand Prix from Brazil. A Grand Prix that in the last few years has been consistently one of the best on the calendar. One bit of news, though, to bring you is, unfortunately, I will be doing this stream tonight solo. Niblo, my co-commentator, as usual, cannot join me for tonight because of the timing of, obviously, the race. For him, it's in the middle of the night, and he has important things that he needs to be getting on with, not around that time as well. So yeah, that's why he won't be able to be on. But he did say that he will definitely be coming on for the next Grand Prix, which is the Las Vegas Grand Prix. Obviously, that race is much better timing for him. So he will definitely be back on in 2 weeks. And then I'd imagine he'll be back on as well for the final race in Abu Dhabi, which is in only a month's time. So yeah, it'll just be solo for today. And as well, before we go any further, as usual, there is a poll running in the live chat asking you guys, who do you think will win today's Sao Paulo Grand Prix? Will it be Lando Norris, Oscar Piastri, Charles Leclerc, or Kimi Antonelli? Out of those four, and that is the top four on the grid, not necessarily in that order, but out of those four, who do you think wins today's race in Brazil? Let me know between now and about 5 minutes before the race starts, and we'll see who you guys have voted for before we get into things in Brazil. But as usual, we'll do the typical race build-up. We'll go through what happened yesterday with qualifying, look at the what the grid makeup is, we'll look at the data from yesterday to see why certain teams were so fast yesterday. We'll go through, obviously, the speed trap data just to see who through the speed trap is looking really strong, because obviously that does matter in regards to today with overtaking and all of that. And we'll also get into not only my predictions, but we'll get into race strategy as well, which of course is important for this race. So that's what we're going to do. And I think we'll just get straight into it. And beginning with the qualifying results, Lando Norris on pole position for McLaren. And McLaren, they were clearly the fastest team in qualifying. There is no doubt about that. But that was still a very good pole position lap from Lando, especially after screwing up that first run in Q3. He did something that he failed to do earlier in the season, which was get it together for the final run and still deliver the lap that was clearly there to be delivered. So, brilliant pole position for Lando, who really is dominating this weekend. Second, Kimi Antonelli, yet again, he was second in sprint qualifying, second in the sprint race, and second in qualifying. Antonelli having a really good weekend. This is probably Antonelli's best race weekend I can think of that he's had to this point, this season and of his career. People may say Miami was his best because he got pole for the sprint, but he really fell apart in the sprint race. So that's why I wouldn't quite agree that that was the best Grand Prix weekend of his career so far. And he has been quite clearly faster than George Russell this weekend. And I do wonder with Antonelli, because he was faster than Russell in Mexico, I do start to wonder whether Antonelli has finally, figured it out, and whether Antonelli now has the ability to be on the same pace, if not quicker, than George Russell. Obviously, we need a few more races to see whether that is the case, but I do get the feeling that Antonelli might have figured things out a bit. So yeah, great from Antonelli to see him right up there, and he should be pretty strong today. Charles Leclerc third. Leclerc put in a great performance. The Ferrari, I don't think, could have done any better than that. Leclerc has been in brilliant form in these last few races, still once again proving that he is one of the best on the grid. And then in fourth, Oscar Piastri. It was looking so good for Piastri after that first run in Q3. He was on provisional pole, and it looked like he was going to end up probably at worst third if Norris and Leclerc improved on what they had done previously. Fourth place was not looking likely, but he just did not improve that final run. That final run was simply not good enough, and Piastri should be on the front row, no doubt about it. He should not be in fourth. So yet again, poor performance by Piastri. But today he can absolutely correct that. But whether he will or not is a different story. Fifth, Isaac Hadjar. What a performance. He has been so good in qualifying this year. He was, as you can see, only about half a tenth away from out qualifying Piastri, and both Racing Bulls were absolutely stunning. 5th and 7th. That is, I don't think their best qualifying of the season. I think the Dutch Grand Prix was slightly better. I think in Holland they were 4th and 8th, which I think technically would be a better team qualifying result than what they had yesterday. But yeah, absolutely brilliant, and cannot wait to see how quick Racing Bulls are in this Grand Prix. George Russell 6th. Russell really did struggle in qualifying. Just didn't have any grip on really any of the tyres in the session and ended up nearly, or well, pretty much a quarter of a second off the pace of teammate Antonelli. So that is very disappointing from Russell. He should not be that far off his teammate. I mean, there's nothing wrong with being out-qualified by Antonelli necessarily, because Antonelli obviously is very talented, but to be quarter of a second off around a short lap like this is quite alarming, let's say. But there is still a chance today for Russell to get a better result. But I'd be surprised if Russell finished on the podium. I just don't think he has enough pace within himself in that car to end up on the podium. I think Antonelli does, but Russell does not. Lawson, shout out to him. I said going into qualifying, keep your eye on Lawson because he has been pretty good here in Interlagos in the past. And look what he did. 7th on the grid, which really helps his case to stay on the grid for 2026. I do feel sorry, though, for Oliver Bearman, 8th on the grid, which is still a good result. But if he had improved that final run, even by just a couple tenths of a second, he would have ended up 3rd. Or even if it was only a tenth of a second he improved by on that final run, he would have been 4th. That is the difference between, improving your lap time on the final run and not. And that's, same thing with Oscar Piastri that cost him in the late stages of qualifying. So I do feel sorry for Bearman because I feel like he should have had a much better result than what he actually got. But 8th is still good, and I do think he will progress today. I think he is quicker than the 2 Racing Bull cars. Whether he's quick enough to be ahead of one of the Mercedes cars, I'm not sure. I mean, Haas were faster than Mercedes in Mexico by a couple tenths of a second per lap. So if they can replicate that again, theoretically, Haas should be finishing probably, say, 5th in this race. But obviously this is a different type of track, so it doesn't always work out that way. But yeah, Bearman is, I think, one of the drivers to watch out for today because he should have been a lot higher up on the grid. And if he did qualify 3rd, I think there's a pretty good chance he would be on finishing on the podium today because his pace in that car is incredibly good. But again, just didn't quite deliver on that final lap in Q3. 9th, massive shout out to Pierre Gasly. What a drive from him in one of the worst cars on the grid that we've seen this season. He has ended up 9th on the grid. Yes, the Alpine is better this weekend than we've seen in most races, but still is not good enough, I would say, to the point where it should be up in 9th place. That is a phenomenal performance by Gasly, who we do know is really good around this track. He's finished on the podium here twice. 2019, he finished 2nd for AlphaTauri, and then last year, remember, he was 3rd for Alpine. So he's always been really good here, but to do what he did, just, incredible performance by Gasly. Still proving that he is still a really good driver and that, the issues in terms of what's happened with his results, it is down to the car. Because when the car's good, he is, still a very fast racing driver. And also credit to Nico Hülkenberg sneaking into the top 10. I didn't think Sauber had the ability, honestly, to get in the top 10, but Hülkenberg produced a super lap in Q2 to just about get ahead of Fernando Alonso and get into the top 10. One thing, though, is just incredible, and I know it's a short lap in Brazil, but only half a second covering the top 10, and only, a tenth and a half separating 4th place Piastri down to Hulkenberg in 10th. That is just amazing to me. I don't think we've ever seen it this close before in or at this circuit. Maybe we have in one particular year, but I can't remember it being this close. It is insane how close it is through the field. And that is what made qualifying yesterday so exciting, and I think that's what will make the race today exciting as well. The rest of the field, Fernando Alonso, 11th. Alonso should be disappointed. He really should have made the top 10. The car, I think, was quick enough to be in the top 10, but he did not do a good enough final run in Q2. Albon, 12th. Both Williams is failing to improve on their final lap, so I do think also there was more potential in the Williams than what was shown, but they didn't show it. And then Lewis Hamilton, 13th on the grid. Once again, another example of why he should step away from Formula One, because he is just nowhere near as good as he used to be. One thing, though, that I do want to comment on is I did listen to a small snippet of Sky F1's post-qualifying coverage, and they were talking about Lewis Hamilton, and Karun Chandok was just trying his best to make an excuse for Lewis Hamilton's result, and I was just like, why are you trying to excuse his result? It's not excusable. Yes, Leclerc is very fast. Karun did say he thinks Leclerc is the best qualifier on the grid, which, yeah, maybe I could agree with that. But he should not be 0.3 of a second slower than his teammate around a track this short. That just should not be happening. He should be, at most, a 10th, maybe a 10.5 slower than Leclerc. And if he was, say, a 10th slower than Leclerc yesterday, he would have ended up in the top 5, top 6 on the grid. Which, yeah, you could say still not great, but a lot better than 13th. And at least Hamilton would be maybe a slight contender for a podium. But 13th, I'm sorry, is nowhere near good enough. And the reason Leclerc ended up in 3rd, it's not just because Leclerc was really good yesterday. It was also because the Ferrari car was a lot better than it was in the sprint sessions, but also the Ferrari car was definitely still good enough to compete for a top 5 in qualifying and ended up in the top 3. So there is no excuse for Lewis Hamilton being in 13th. I don't care what people say. There is no excuse for that. The Ferrari car is not that slow. Absolutely no chance. And then you got Lance Stroll, 14th. Actually, not bad of a qualifying from Stroll compared to his teammate. Only a 10.5 slower. That's probably one of the best qualifyings he's had this season. Carlos Sainz, 15th. Again, Williams failing to improve on their final runs is why they ended up with a worse grid position than they really should have had. Max Verstappen then in 16th. And it would be wrong of me to claim that there was some issue or whatever with the car, because there was no dramatic issue with the Red Bull car yesterday, other than it being way too slow. And that is the simple reality as to why both Red Bulls were knocked out in Q1 yesterday. The Red Bull was the slowest car in qualifying. Simple as that. It wasn't because Max had some power unit issue or he had a front wing problem. None of that. Or a broken floor. Again, none of that. The car was simply dreadful. And that's why he ended up 16th and Tsunoda down in 19th. That's as simple as that. I know it's shocking to say that, given that they've been so quick in the last few races. I mean, only 2 races ago in Austin, they were dominating, getting pole, winning the race comfortably and all of that, but that is quite simply, what they are like this weekend. Now, in the race, they will improve. They're not going to be, as far off the pace as they were in qualifying. I'm sure they'll improve in the race. By the way, Max Verstappen is going to start from the pit lane because why not? He's, so low down on the grid that may as well change around the car, the setup, and try and improve things. But yeah, Red Bull will be faster today. I think Max will definitely finish in the points, but they are not going to be anywhere near the podium because that car is just not anywhere near close to the McLaren, the Ferrari, the Mercedes. It just isn't. So I think Max finishes probably 7th or 8th today. And by the end of this race, in a couple hours, Max Verstappen will be pretty much eliminated from the World Championship conversation for 2025. It's a shame that, it has to pretty much end this way. But as I said in a video that I did a couple months ago, Red Bull have failed Max Verstappen in 2025. They have not given him a consistently fast enough car to win enough races and fight properly for the championship. So it's Red Bull's fault in terms of who's to blame in 2025. Verstappen has been brilliant. And if the car was consistently quick enough, I'm sure Max would be winning his 5th World Championship this year. But that's the way it is. And then after that, Esteban Ocon is 17th. I think Ocon, initially, I wasn't really that disappointed with what Ocon did because I didn't think Haas were that quick yesterday. But then Behrman went and did what he did. So, yeah, in the end, pretty disappointing performance by Ocon, given how quick Behrman was. Given how quick Behrman was, Ocon really should have been in the top 10 at minimum, but 17th is where he ended up, and Ocon will also start from the pit lane. We'll only have 18 cars on the grid, and that'll mean Franco Colapinto, the Argentine, will start 16th, Tsunoda will start 17th, Bortoleto, who didn't do qualifying, the obviously home driver, the Brazilian, he will start 18th. Bortoleto didn't do qualifying, of course, because he had a big crash in the sprint race and they couldn't get the car repaired in time for qualifying. And then, starting from the pit lane, it will be Max Verstappen 19th and Esteban Ocon in 20th. So that is your starting grid for the Sao Paulo Grand Prix. But let's get into the sector time data just to understand why certain teams were quick yesterday and why certain teams were off the pace. In the first sector, very even pretty much throughout the whole field. McLaren ending up just about the quickest in the first sector. The only thing to really note is Red Bull nearly 2/10 off in just the first sector alone. And also, Sauber, the slowest team in the first sector, which I just think is really impressive that Hülkenberg made the top 10 despite having such a poor first sector time. So very impressive there for Hülkenberg. But pretty much all the teams on similar pace. The middle sector, though, really is what showed yesterday who had a real good car and who didn't. McLaren, again, the fastest team, no surprise there. Mercedes, though, were a bit closer in the middle sector compared to sprint qualifying. So Mercedes, very good car through the corners, but just, again, not quite on the same level as the McLaren. Haas, though, third quickest. It's just so impressive what they've done with that car in the last couple races. Still, no idea what they have done with the car, but it's been very impressive. Alpine, right up there as well. Again, don't know what they've done with that car, but it's worked a treat. Racing Bulls as well, very good middle sector pace, and Sauber as well. Ferrari about 1/10 away from McLaren, which, to be honest, I don't think there's anything wrong with that middle sector pace from the Ferrari, given the issues we know that they've got with that car. But because they're a tenth and a half off, it leaves a gap between them and McLaren to be exposed, which Haas, Alpine, and Racing Bulls and Sauber have done. So it makes it look worse for Ferrari than it actually is. And then you got Aston Martin, a lot slower in the middle sector than they were in sprint qualifying. In sprint qualifying, they were in second in this part of the lap. And if they had continued that level of pace in the middle sector yesterday, Alonso would definitely have been, I think, quite high up on the grid, probably in the top 6 or 7 on the grid. And then the two slowest teams, the Williams and Red Bull, half a second slower than McLaren in just the middle sector, which is a massive amount of time to lose in 35.5 seconds of mostly slow speed corners. And then the final sector, of course, is just one corner and then flat out. McLaren, once again, the fastest team. Sauber really doing a lot in the final sector, which is what really helped them get into the top 10. Alpine as well, very strong. Pretty much all the teams, though, again, on, say, the same pace, except for Williams and Red Bull. Slight drop-off for them. But in the first and the final sector, if we look at the first sector again, there's not really anything separating most of the teams. It's just the middle sector, which is offering that separation between the teams here. And that's what's making it so close, because there's only one sector really that is separating the teams out. If the middle sector was like the first sector, then it would be unbelievably, insanely close, the whole field. But that's the way it is. But in terms of the pecking order from qualifying, McLaren clearly were the fastest team. Mercedes, I think, were definitely the second best. Ferrari, you'd have to say third. Actually, no, Ferrari not third. I'm going to say Haas were third. I think, again, if Behrman had improved that final lap, I think Haas would have been in the top 3 on the grid. So, yeah, I'd say Haas third, Ferrari fourth, Racing Bulls fifth, and then sixth, honestly, I would say Aston Martin. I do think Alonso would have been a bit faster had he made Q3. So I do think there is more pace in that Aston Martin. And then seventh, I would say Sauber. Eighth, Alpine. Ninth, Williams. And 10th, and slowest in qualifying at least, Red Bull. For the race, though, I think the pecking order will be different. McLaren will definitely have quite comfortably the fastest car. Second quickest, though, honestly, I think will be Ferrari, just about. I think it'll be very close between Ferrari and Mercedes on pace, but I think Ferrari will just about edge it over Mercedes. And then fourth quickest, I think, will be the Haas team. Fifth, Red Bull. I think they'll be a lot better today. Sixth, Racing Bulls. Seventh, Aston Martin. Eighth, Sauber. Ninth, Williams. And Alpine, I expect to have the slowest pace in the race. So there should be quite a bit of changing around the position today after what happened in qualifying. But let's take a look quickly at the top speeds. This is the speed trap data from the speed trap located at the end of the long pit straight. And it's pretty equal again between all of the teams. Only 5 kilometers an hour separating the 10 teams, and even down to Aston Martin, it's only about 3 kilometers an hour separating the top 9. But yeah, McLaren, Alpine, and Red Bull at the top, and then you got Ferrari, Williams, Racing Bulls, Mercedes, Sauber, Aston Martin, and Haas. The only thing I will comment on in regards to this data is if Haas had an extra 2 or 3 kilometers an hour, Behrman, I think, had the potential to possibly put it on the front row if he had those extra 2 or 3 kilometers an hour and had improved that final lap in qualifying. So, again, it shows you the real potential of that Haas car through the corners. It's a very good car. We've seen it all season. Not to this point where they're, like a front-running team, but they have shown, I think, many times this season that they've had a lot more potential than what has actually been shown a lot of the time. But pretty much everyone on the same top speed, which is, I wouldn't say necessarily great for the race, because that means that DRS trains are probably going to be likely, given that there's not like a big differential in speed down the straights, but we'll see anyway what happens. And quickly, before I go on to my race predictions, I do want to quickly just say I was going to show you guys the race pace data from the sprint race, but then I remembered that, of course, we had some damp/wet running in the sprint, so the race pace data from the sprint would not be, I think, totally representative, which is why I've not included it. But let's get into my race predictions, and I've gone obviously with my predicted gaps as well. And I think Lando Norris will win the Sao Paulo Grand Prix, and I think he'll dominate the race and win it by about 25 seconds, ahead of Charles Leclerc, who I think will just about hold off Oscar Piastri in the McLaren and Kimi Antonelli in the Mercedes. I think it's going to be a very close battle for second, third, and fourth between Antonelli, Leclerc, and Piastri, but I think Leclerc wins that battle and grabs second place. Russell, I think, will finish in fifth. Behrman will make some progress and finish in sixth. I think Behrman has the pace to beat Russell, but I think because of his grid position, I think that's what will cost him being able to actually finish in the top five. And then in seventh, I'm going Lewis Hamilton. Eighth, Max Verstappen, who I think will just about finish ahead of the two Racing Bull cars of Isaac Hadjar and Liam Lawson. So that is my top 10, my predicted top 10 for the race. And if this top 10 result was to happen, then Lando Norris would extend his championship lead to 19 points over Oscar Piastri going into the Las Vegas Grand Prix. And for Max Verstappen, if this result was to happen, Verstappen would fall to 60 points behind going into the next Grand Prix, which would effectively end his championship hopes. Also, if this result was to happen, Mercedes would score 22 points, Ferrari would score 24 points, which would keep the battle for second in the championship close. And in regards to the midfield, if this result was to happen, Racing Bulls would be 3 points clear of Aston Martin in the battle for sixth in the championship. And Haas would close the gap right down and would be only, I think, 2 points behind Aston Martin and about, 5 or 6 points behind Racing Bulls. So we'll see if this result does happen, but if it does, it would change things quite a bit in the championship. But guys, with just under an hour and a half to go, let me know your thoughts ahead of this Grand Prix. What do you think is going to happen today in Brazil? Who do you think wins the race? Who do you think finishes on the podium? Give me your top 3 or top 5 prediction. Of course, there is the poll running in the chat where you guys can vote on who you think will most likely win the Sao Paulo Grand Prix. Make sure to vote in that poll before lights out. Just waiting for the next minute to tick over so I can put the timer back on screen. And make sure to put that all in the comments section. And I'll make sure to get to a load of your comments pretty soon. But one thing I wanted to say quickly as well is don't forget to subscribe for more content like this, because we will be doing qualifying and race watch-alongs to cover the final few races of this season. And of course, and there you go, hour and 25 minutes to go, we will be doing plenty of content regarding next season, the 2026 Formula 1 season. So make sure to join us for that and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. And also subscribe for plenty of winter break content, which is coming your way very soon. And as well, make sure to smash the like button. We're currently on 15 likes. Let's try and get up to 25 plus likes if we can on this stream in, say, the next half an hour. That'd be great if we could do that. But before we come to your comments in the chat, make sure to keep them coming. One thing we are going to go through is race strategy. So, I was just seeing something quite weird. What do you call it? Yeah, we're going to go through race strategy for this Grand Prix. And I can't see what Pirelli have said in terms of what the fastest race strategy is for today. But let me just look at the F1 website. I think they might have something on that. And yeah, let me have a look. Oh, I need to sign up to F1 unlocked for that. So unfortunately, can't do that. I'd imagine though, because of the way things have been lately, it's probably going to be a one-stop race if it is dry. It's not going to be that hot, this Grand Prix. The temperatures are, for this track, it's not anywhere near as high as we've seen previously. So in terms of tyre wear, it should be fine, quite frankly. And it should be, like I said, a one-stop race here in Brazil. And what they'll probably do is start on the medium compound tyre and then move to the hard compound to do the rest of the race. That's what I think most drivers will do. But of course, a lot of the drivers are probably going to do that strategy differently in terms of when they pit to go to hard tyres, whether it's earlier than others, later than others, so on and so forth. So that is obviously the thing of interest on the strategy. But I think if we just look at the front running teams in terms of their strategy options, for Lando Norris, all he has to do is just maintain the lead on the first lap, and it doesn't matter what strategy they go with for him with McLaren, because he will easily have the pace to win the race even if he doesn't pit on the ideal lap. He should have the pace to pull away from the cars behind it. Probably a quarter of a second lap, something like that, at least for the first few laps, and then that gap will probably grow if there's battling behind, which I imagine there will be. So yeah, Lando, as long as he leads on the first lap, I think his strategy is irrelevant, quite frankly, because his pace should win the race. For Oscar Piastri, though, McLaren, we know when there are cars out of position, they do tend to run longer than others to give their drivers fresher tyres for the final stint or later stints, let's say, in a Grand Prix. Today, if they were to do that, I think Piastri would probably have to go until probably lap 40, maybe lap 45, before making a pit stop. If he was to try that, going longer with the first stint strategy. Let's say all of the top 10 start on the medium compound tyre. If, let's say, Antonelli and Leclerc pit on around lap 30, I think Piastri absolutely can get away with going until at least lap 40, maybe lap 45 before pitting, and then he will have to just push like hard, or push basically like it's qualifying for the final 25, 26 laps to catch and pass Leclerc and Antonelli if those are the cars ahead of him. So watch out for that with McLaren, because I think that is likely what they will do to help Piastri get ahead of those two cars. In terms of pure pace, Piastri should finish in second today, but obviously it's not quite as simple as that. So yeah, with Piastri, that's what I think they'll probably do. For Antonelli and Mercedes, I think if Antonelli's in second, I think they'll just cover off what the cars behind do. I don't think Mercedes are going to try anything extravagant. I don't think they're going to do a two-stop strategy or anything like that. Because I don't think that type of strategy is likely to work at all for what they are, trying to accomplish from this Grand Prix. So yeah, I think with Antonelli, I think he likely just covers off what the cars behind do to protect his position. And for George Russell, I think Russell probably will do what Piastri's going to do and run longer with the first stint and go until, say, lap 40, lap 45 before pitting. That's the only thing he can do, Russell, if he wants to somehow fight for the podium. If he was, though, to go until lap 40 before he pitted, and let's say his teammate pitted on lap 30, he's going to have to do some comeback drive if he's to get anywhere near his teammate by the end of the race. So I think with Russell, maybe, yeah, he does go longer than Antonelli, but I don't think it'll be as long as what Piastri is going to do. If Antonelli pits on lap 30, I think Russell probably pits on around lap 35 at the latest, because I think Russell will probably lose too much time to be able to reverse back any time lost by going a bit longer. So yeah, I can see Russell going a few laps longer, but not as long as Piastri. And then with Ferrari, Leclerc, I think, is mainly just going to be focusing on finishing on the podium. If he can finish second, obviously that is, I think, the highest aim really Ferrari can have for this race, unless something dramatic happens to Lando Norris. And quite simply for Leclerc, if they're right behind Antonelli, then obviously they need to go for an undercut, or maybe they'll trying to go for an overcut, go a lap or two longer to try and get past that way. I think that's likely what Ferrari do. I don't see them doing anything extravagant with Leclerc, because I don't think there's any point in them doing that. I think if they just run the basic, expected strategy with Leclerc, then he should be fine to finish, in a good enough position for how quick the car is in the race. For Lewis Hamilton, I think very likely he will start on a different compound compared to Leclerc. Leclerc, I think, starts probably on the medium compound. For Lewis Hamilton, I think the problem is if he starts on the hard compound tyre, it is very durable, but it's not going to have, I don't think, a positive effect in terms of its pace until probably lap 15, lap 20. And that might be too long for Lewis Hamilton to wait to be able to, properly get into the race and show some good pace. So with Hamilton, because also he missed Q3, he should have at least one new set of soft tyres available. If I was Ferrari, I think I would put the soft tyres on for Hamilton to start the race and just try and get Hamilton as high up the field as you can. Sorry for the silence there. I just muted my microphone to cough. Yeah, that's what I would do with Hamilton. Put him on the soft tyre, and then, just try and get him as high up the field as you can, and then try and pit him I mean, if you're going to start on the soft tyre, may as well do a two-stop strategy. So I would pit him around probably anywhere between lap 15 and 20 is when you should be doing your first pit stop if you're doing a two-stop strategy. And so yeah, Hamilton, if he starts on the soft, pit him around lap 17, 18, and then go on to a set of mediums, do say 25, 30 laps on those, and then finish the race either on another set of mediums or on a set of hard tyres. That's what I would do. Even though a two-stop strategy maybe isn't the quickest way to do this race, I don't think they're going to benefit from having Hamilton start on the hard tyre and just be running in a DRS train for 20 laps. I don't think that's going to help him at all. He needs to be, getting past cars and, getting higher up the field to help his situation. He can't be sat in the middle of the pack because that'll, one, damage his tyres, but two, waste the laps where he could be showing obviously much more pace on, softer tyres. So that's what I would do. There's nothing to lose with Lewis doing a two-stop strategy. A two-stop strategy can work here in Brazil because normally the thing that I wouldn't say prevents you, but the thing that hurts you doing an extra pit stop is encountering traffic, because even though you have fresher tires, if you can't pass that traffic quickly enough or not at all, then you can't make your fresher tires and your extra pit stop work compared to people who are doing one less pit stop. So that normally is the issue with doing an extra pit stop. But here in Brazil, because it is a lot easier to overtake, that is not anywhere near as big of an issue. Sorry, as big of an issue. So I don't see why they shouldn't try that. It's something that could work. Lewis isn't going to finish in the top 5, so there's no point trying to put him on a strategy where he goes 45, 50 laps before pitting and then finally puts on a set of medium or soft tyres to be fast at the end. Because if he spends loads of time stuck in traffic on slower, hard tyres, then it'll be too little too late, I think, with that. And then for Red Bull and Max Verstappen, it should be fun to see what Max does. I think with Max, I would start him on the hard compound tyre and just run him as long into the race as possible. The reason I say that, and I don't say he should do a two-stop as well as Hamilton, is because I think Max is able to break a DRS train better than that Ferrari of Hamilton is. So I don't think a DRS train will be as big of an issue for him as it would be probably for Lewis Hamilton. And obviously Red Bull have had the chance, starting from the pit lane, they've had the chance to fool around with the setup and probably go with a setup that allows Max to overtake people. So I would start Max on the hard tyre, run him as long into the race as possible, and hope for a safety car. And then if a safety car comes midway through the race, perfect. He can then get into the race and maybe somehow snatch a top 5 or even a podium, dare I say. But that's the only thing they can do, really, in this Grand Prix. But we'll see what Verstappen can do from the pit lane and 19th place. But strategy-wise, you'll get some people going longer with their first stints. Williams will be a team, no doubt, who will probably go 40 to 50 laps into the race before pitting. I have no doubt they'll try that, but I think most cars will start on the medium and pit around lap, between lap 25 and 35 for their one and only pit stop. And then maybe we'll get a couple cars going for a two-stop if they really feel the need to be ambitious. Like I said, Lewis Hamilton, maybe one of the Red Bulls will try that. Who knows? But we have got an hour and 10 minutes to go. By the way, hello to Ronan, who just said hello. We've got an hour and 10 minutes to go until the Grand Prix is underway. And good to see, by the way, we've got 27 likes. We hit the first target. Let's try and get up to 40 plus likes if we can in the next half an hour. That'd be great if we could do that. So make sure to smash a like button if you haven't already. It does help in the helps the channel in the algorithm if you are so kind to do that. But yeah, for the next, say, 30 to 40 minutes, we are going to read your comments. So keep them coming. Let me know, what do you think is going to happen today? What are your predictions for the top 3, the top 5, top 10, if you want to do those predictions? But also, let me know, what do you think the championship on the driver's side will look like after this race? Who do you think will be the clear favourite to win the championship coming out of this race? Will it be Lando Norris? Will it be Oscar Piastri? Or by some miracle, will it be Max Verstappen? Let me know in the live chat. But hello to all of you. Hope you're all doing good. Before I read your comments, though, I will just quickly have a drink of water just to help my throat a bit. And then we'll go through your comments for the next 30, 45 minutes. Right, so let's see what you guys are having to say. And Niblo actually commented at the start of the stream saying, "This sport is shit, see you all in Vegas." And that pretty much sums up his mood in regards to how the championship has gone, obviously, for his man Oscar Piastri. It's fallen apart to this point. Still time, obviously, for it to, for it to be swung around for Piastri, but yeah, since I think the last time Nib was on stream was Baku, and since then, it has just fallen apart. Good to see Astro in the chat. Says, what the fuck is up with Oscar Piastri? Just these last 5 or 4 races versus how he was doing most of the season. I don't understand how he can suddenly just not be as good as he's been. Fishy as fuck. I don't buy into any of that rubbish. McLaren are not sabotaging his car. Absolute rubbish. It's not happening. There is no benefit to doing that. Because, let's say Lando was still performing poorly at the minute like he was earlier in the season, that would then just open the door for Max Verstappen to win the championship. And McLaren are not going to sabotage Piastri's car in the hope that Lando would win the championship when they don't know that. So, yeah, there is absolutely no chance that McLaren have sabotaged Piastri's car. I've seen people accusing McLaren of it, but it's nonsense. It really is. It's just absolute rubbish. I'm not saying you're saying it, Astro, but I just want to make it clear that, it is absolute rubbish. Those accusations. That, again, there is no good reason for McLaren to do it. And obviously you would only have, if you were doing that, something like that, you would only have, good reasons from their perspective to do it. And again, there isn't any. So I don't think that's what it is. I think what it is with Oscar Piastri, it's a pretty simple equation. In sports, momentum is one of the most powerful things you can have. in football, for example, if you start winning games, if you can keep that momentum going and keep that winning run going, even if you're not that great of a team, if you can keep a winning run going, it can transform your season. Same thing with tennis players. If you can keep a winning streak going, it can, transform your season. And if you make the most of that momentum, it can transform your season. Same thing in a boxing fight. If you have the momentum in a fight, if you take full advantage of that, it can be the difference between you winning and losing. But what I think is a real test of how great of a sportsman you are, not in terms of um respect. I'm talking more in terms of um the absolute elite sports people that we've seen in the last 30 or 40 years. They don't allow, when momentum goes against them, and it happens for everyone, every sports person will have momentum swing against them and they have to fight against it. But the absolute best don't allow it to happen for, you know, um, for a load of races in a row, matches in a row, whatever you want to call it. And if we bring this back to Formula One, for Oscar Piastri, what's happened is he had a really poor weekend in Baku and simply has not turned the tide back in his favour. And the longer you go without turning the tide back in your favour, it gets harder and harder to turn it back in your favour. When again, the absolute most elite, say, drivers or sportsmen, sports people in history, either immediately correct that or correct it soon enough that they don't allow that momentum against them to cost them winning championships or big titles or whatever you call it. And again, if we bring it back to Formula One, Max Verstappen, and I think there's a great example of this from last season. There was quite a lot of momentum against Max Verstappen from midway through 2024 going into the last few races of the season. Max was losing points to Lando race by race, was continuously not finishing on the podium, was having a lot of poor races. But eventually, to win the championship, he broke that poor momentum or poor run by brilliantly winning this Grand Prix last year, which is effectively what won him the championship. And again, that is what Piastri has failed to do. And he's had chances in Singapore. He outqualified his teammate, but then didn't have a great start. Lando obviously got ahead of Piastri in not the cleanest way, but that really ruffled Piastri's feathers. And then in Texas and Mexico had two poor qualifying sessions that set him up to not finish on the podium when he needed to at least be on the podium. And here in Brazil, he's done the same thing. He needed to be at least, I would say, on the front row for this race, and instead he's fourth on the grid. He's not doing what he needs to do to swing the momentum back in his favour. And ultimately, that's probably what is going to cost him the championship, because he just cannot find a way to turn the tide in his favour. And again, the absolute best, either sports people or Formula One drivers in history, when things are going against them, they find a way pretty soon to turn it back in their favour. Again, your Max Verstappens, your Lewis Hamiltons, your Sebastian Vettels, Alonso's, Schumacher's, drivers like this. But Piastri, since it turned against him in Baku with that really poor weekend, he just has not found a way to turn it back in his favour. And that is ultimately why he is now 9 points behind in the championship with 4 races to go and a sprint race, obviously, to go in Qatar. Right, let me see if I can find some other good comments. Yanni saying, "This is the day. Hello, Ultra. This should be a fun race, hopefully." We've had, the last few years, we've had some really great races here. Last year, obviously, was a classic in the wet. 2023, we had some really great racing. Obviously, Alonso overtaking Perez on the final lap to finish on the podium. 2022, we had loads of overtaking and controversy. 2021 was that amazing win from Lewis Hamilton from, what was it, 8th on the grid or 10th on the grid. One of the best victories of Hamilton's career. 2019 was an absolutely mental race and a mental finish. Even 2018 was a pretty dramatic race where Max incredibly went from 5th to 1st and then collided with the back marker and all of that. So, yeah, the last few editions of this race have been very exciting, and hopefully that trend will only continue. As I'm looking at the Sky F1 coverage, by the way, as we're just under an hour to go into the race, and it is currently bone dry in Sao Paulo. Yanni says, "I'm not counting Max out until after at the end of this race. Shit happens, lol." I am also not counting him out until we get to the end of this race, because even though, yeah, I predicted him to finish in 8th, that's most likely where he will finish, I think. You just never know with the guy, as we saw last year in this race. So we'll have to wait and see. But most likely, I think his championship challenge ends today. But who knows with Max? And who knows what could happen up front? You know, at the start with Lando and Oscar, you just don't know what could happen. Brizzy saying in Mad Max we trust. NYC saying, "How's the weather?" Yeah, it's dry at the minute. I think, though, looking at the radar, and I will just have another quick look. Um, it looks like we've got, yeah, about a 40 to 50% chance of rain for the race. But then the race starts at 2 p.m. local time. By the time the race finishes, the chance of rain would have increased from about 30 to 40% to about 50%. So, yeah. There is definitely a chance of a couple showers in the race today, but I think most likely, I think it'll be just an overcast, dry race. But as we've seen here in Brazil, you don't know. We've had races here before where rain wasn't forecast, and then you get a shower, you know, out of nowhere for a few minutes, which completely throws everyone for 6. Um, Laurie's saying, "I think that's pretty accurate, Jazz." I think he's talking about my prediction. Although I'm not sure Norris will be quite that dominant. I understand why you say that, but remember, Lando did win the last Grand Prix Mexico. Lando did win by half a minute over Leclerc, so I think it's pretty likely. And that McLaren is a lot quicker than the Ferrari in race conditions, which the last couple races especially has proven. And Laurie also saying Piastri's first half of the season was very good. There was only a few races where he left more on the table. Second in the season, he's been disappointing. Absolutely. Uh, Astro goes for a pretty biased and hopeful prediction, but I'll read it out anyway. Piastri to win from Antonelli, Hamilton, Hulkenberg, Ocon, Tsunoda, Max, and Max being the last finisher, everyone else DNFs. I don't think we've had one of those type of races here before. Obviously, Monaco, we've had those ones where only like 5 or 6 cars finish, but I'm not sure we've had any of those type of ones in Brazil. Let me just have a quick look. Because there are a couple races we've had here that have been very wet. The 96 Brazilian Grand Prix, we had 12 or 11 cars finish. That was a very wet Brazilian Grand Prix. And then 1993, which was Senna's last win in Brazil, we had 12 cars finish, and that we had a massive downpour during that race. So normally we get about, if it at the lowest, 10 to 12 cars finishing. And by the way, it is great to say that we have a Brazilian on the grid finally at the what is pretty much the Brazilian Grand Prix. This has been the first Grand Prix since 17 here in Interlagos was the last time we had a Brazilian on the grid, and that day was a great day for that Brazilian driver. Felipe Massa finished in, 7th place in what was his penultimate race of his career. Bortoleto will have to do something incredible to have anything quite like that today. But yeah, good to see that we've got Brazilian drivers back on the grid, because it's been a travesty that we went so long without one. Right, let's see if I've got any other good comments here. Yvonne saying, "Hi, Chazza, how are you? I'm good. I'm, as I said yesterday on stream, I'm just coming into the last month of my first semester on my master's course, and yeah, things are going okay. And hopefully, whatever the piece of work I am doing for my first semester, hopefully I'll be happy with when I submit it, and hopefully I'll get a decent grade. But yeah, I'm enjoying. Well, I wouldn't say I'm enjoying life, but I'm content. I think anyone who truly enjoys life is a psychopath, quite frankly. But I'd say I'm content with life. So yeah, thank you, and hopefully you are as well. Ronan says Lando, Piastri, and Verstappen are my podium predictions. That would be pretty crazy if Max finished third, but you never know. And Ronan also asking thoughts on the Felipe Massa court case. If you're wondering what he's asking, and you may have seen it before. Let me just adjust my chair a second to a more comfortable position. Yeah, Felipe Massa is suing the FIA and F1 in damages because he claims that the race fixing incident in Singapore that Renault did with Nelson Piquet Jr. and Fernando Alonso, he claims that cost him the world championship, and obviously that case has begun. I've seen that the FIA and F1, their defense is that Felipe Massa made too many mistakes in 2008, and that's why he didn't win the championship. Which is true to an extent, but let's not forget that Lewis Hamilton made some mistakes that season as well. I don't like how it's being painted like Lewis Hamilton had like a perfect season, and that he won the championship in a much slower car, and had an amazing season, because it was a great season from Hamilton, don't get me wrong. But it was nowhere near as good as his 2007 season. 2007 was the season where he actually deserved to win the championship. 2008, again, it was a very good season, but it wasn't as good as 2007. He made quite a few mistakes that year, crashing and going up into the rear wing of Alonso in Bahrain, crashing into the back of Raikkonen in Canada in the pit lane. What do you call it? What was the other one? Oh yeah, Japan lost the lead on the off the start finish line, and then he did a massive dive bomb that took about 5 cars off the track and got a penalty for it. So let's not pretend like Lewis Hamilton had like a mistake-free season, because he didn't. Yeah, Felipe Massa made his mistakes, but so did Lewis Hamilton. That's why it was such an even championship battle in the end, because mistakes were made by both teams and both drivers throughout the course of the season. And, if you look at Felipe Massa, he crashed with David Coulthard in Melbourne, I remember. Then he spun out of second place on his own in Malaysia. Had that race at Silverstone where he spun a million times. But after that Silverstone race, I don't remember him making any more mistakes after that. I mean, people say Singapore, where he drove off with the fuel hose, was a mistake, but I don't think it was, because I don't think I think Ferrari, or the traffic light system that I think they had at the time with the pit stops they did then, I think Felipe was wrongly given the message to go, which is what led to him driving with the fuel hose down the pit lane. But if you go and look at the mistakes that both drivers made and how much points were lost through those mistakes, Felipe Massa lost 8 points in Malaysia, and at Silverstone probably lost, I don't know, let's say 4 points. And then, like I said, I can't remember any other races where, I mean, he did collide with Lewis Hamilton in Japan, which probably cost him an extra couple points. So let's say, Massa lost out on, say, 15 points through his own mistakes. Lewis Hamilton cost himself, what, probably, I think, at least 8 points in Canada. Cost himself probably 4 points in Bahrain. In Japan, probably cost himself at least 6 points. So, in terms of mistakes costing the two drivers, Lewis Hamilton probably cost himself more points. Only just maybe 2 or 3 more points than Massa did. And then if you look at, the non-points finishes, or DNFs, that both drivers had, in Melbourne, Massa did crash with David Coulthard, but I think he actually retired with an engine issue. And then, like I said, Malaysia spun out on his own. And then, obviously, the Hungarian Grand Prix, Massa was leading, was going to win the race, and then his engine blew up. And then after that, I don't think Massa had another DNF. Obviously, Singapore was the fuel hose incident. So Felipe was probably cost, let's say, I don't know, 20 points probably from the non-points finishes / DNFs that weren't his fault. And then with Lewis Hamilton, if you look at the non-points finishes he had, which were not his fault, I'm trying to think. You had France. He did get a penalty for cutting the corner, but when I say cutting the corner, he cut a corner at the start of the race, overtaking another car. But he did have a grid penalty, which put him back on the grid when he should have been up in third. So That cost him probably 6 points. He did have a puncture in Hungary, which I think cost him probably about 4 points. He had the win in Spa wrongly taken away from him. That cost him 4 points and gave Massa 4 points. So overall, they both lost out about 20, maybe just over 20 points from, again, non-points finishes or DNFs that weren't their mistake. So overall, I'd say Lewis Hamilton was the deserving champion for 2008 for two reasons. One, I think he just performed better that season than Massa and had more impressive drives than Massa. But also, the McLaren was the second fastest car that season. Ferrari was the faster car and should theoretically have been winning both drivers and constructors championships, but Hamilton ended up taking the championship in 2008. So overall, when you weigh it all out, I don't think Felipe Massa has a case, because the championship was not just decided by what happened in Singapore. It's not as simple as that. And again, when you look at all of the errors or, you know, races where things didn't quite go to plan, for whether it's mistakes by the driver or bad luck, it all worked out pretty equally for both drivers. So that's why I say that Lewis Hamilton was probably the deserving champion of 2008. And that's what I think the court will find. Because once once I don't know if there's a jury for this trial. I'm assuming there's not. Once the court examines the actual season itself, they'll realise the same thing that I have, just going through the season there. And they'll come to the conclusion that, yes, the Singapore race cost you dearly, but it was not the only primary factor in why you didn't win the championship, which is the truth. So he'll lose the case and it'll all go away. But yeah, we'll see what happens with it, but I would be very surprised if he wins anything from that case. Astra saying, weird that Massa is doing this now. The reason he's doing it is because Bernie Ecclestone's a fucking idiot. Bernie can't keep his mouth shut. Basically came out and said, if that race fixing incident in Singapore didn't happen, then Felipe would be champion, or it was something like that. Or he said something like Felipe should have been awarded champion because of what happened in Singapore. And then Bernie claimed he didn't say it, and then there was just a whole load of controversy surrounding that. And that's what's caused Felipe to pursue this to court. But like I said, I'd be surprised if he wins. I think the odds are pretty stacked against him. Yanni saying, I didn't like Massa and I dislike Ferrari, but they were robbed. I don't think who made more mistakes is the issue. What the problem is that the FIA must have known that the crash and the early pit was a sign of cheating and should have been investigated. I mean, the thing is, and I think maybe this is why they didn't disqualify Fernando Alonso from the results of the Grand Prix, is because, I think the FIA has admitted that, yes, Renault cheated to win that race, but because they haven't altered the results of that Grand Prix, then the FIA, in a way, officially, results-wise, has not acknowledged that, if that makes any sense. So, Yeah. But one thing I do disagree with you on is it does matter who made more mistakes and all of that, because the whole point, Felipe Massa's claim, is that that Singapore race is the sole primary reason why he lost the championship, when that is not the case. And that is why examining the 2008 season with a fine comb in terms of who lost points here for whatever reason, who made mistakes here, who made mistakes there, is important, because it will prove why Felipe Massa is wrong with his claim. Because the reason Felipe lost 2008 is, yes, he had some bad luck with what happened in Singapore and obviously the Hungary DNF when he was leading, but also he did make some pretty poor mistakes that led to him, not winning the championship. But the same is also true for Lewis Hamilton. Let's not pretend that Lewis Hamilton wasn't robbed of, a couple really good results. For example, that race at Spa, absolute bullshit what happened at that race. Lewis Hamilton still, for me, is the rightful winner of that Belgian Grand Prix of 2008. But the FIA went out of their way to make sure that Hamilton got a penalty for that, and were so incredibly soft with their interpretation of the rules on that particular day. So again, once you examine all of that, it proves that no, that Singapore race is not the primary reason why Massa lost the championship. But, let's say Lewis Hamilton took the FIA and F1 to court over the 2021 championship and made the same argument that, if Michael Massey had abided by the regulations correctly, then I would be world champion. Lewis would have much more of a case, because if you go and look at 2021, Lewis and Max collided with each other twice, but it didn't really benefit one driver much more than the other. And both drivers pretty much made the same amount of mistakes, or had the same amount of bad luck, let's say, over the course of the season. So there wasn't like a definitive, there wasn't clear other reasons for why Lewis Hamilton didn't win the championship. So Lewis Hamilton, like I said, if he challenged the 2021 championship in court, he would have much more of a case than Felipe Massa does. Even though I still think Hamilton would probably lose his court case if he did that, because the argument against, which I think would win, would be, well, what about Baku in 2021 where you went straight on and lost and cost yourself the win? What about that? Or, what about Imola where you went straight on and parked basically for 2 minutes and went a lap down? That would be thrown back at him, and I think that's why he would lose also. But, we'll see what happens. Ultimately, as I've said, I don't think he'll win the case. I think it is very unlikely that Felipe Massa wins the case. If he does, though, then if you're Lewis Hamilton, you've got to then take the FIA to court over 2021. If Felipe Massa wins this case, you've got to. Because if Felipe wins his case, Hamilton will definitely win his. Because Hamilton, like I said, has even more of a case than Felipe does. Ronan saying Max should have had the championship won before Abu Dhabi in 2021. Silverstone 2021 was cancelled out by Abu Dhabi. Yeah, I think you may be correct with that. I mean, my own personal view is that Max Verstappen is the deserving champion of 2021. I think he was the better driver that season, and when you account for what happened at Silverstone, where Max lost a potential slash probable race win, and Lewis obviously won the race, that's a big factor in why, as you said, why it went down to the final race. When if Max had won that race at Silverstone and Lewis had finished in second, the championship actually would have been decided in Saudi Arabia. So, yeah. Yanni's saying, I agree with the Massa and Hamilton mistakes is what kept the season close for the outcome. However, if they barred Renault, how do they let the race stand? Makes no sense to me. But it does make no sense. But the thing is they didn't bar Renault. All they did, I think, they gave them a big fine. But I don't think they actually disqualified them from the championship or anything. So in terms of an actual penalty, other than a fine, they didn't receive one, which is why, it's ended up the way it has. As we've got, thankfully, just over half an hour to go until the Sao Paulo Grand Prix. Keep your comments coming before lights out. And as well, make sure to vote in the poll at the top of the chat. We've got another probably 25 minutes until I'm going to finish the results of that poll. And we'll see who you voted for is most likely to win this race. So if you haven't decided yet, you've got another 25 minutes to decide. Who do you think wins the Sao Paulo Grand Prix today? Looney Classic says Lewis would take F1 to court over the Abu Dhabi race only. If he isolates that race alone and forces the court to rule on the race and not the entire season or championship. Yeah, maybe. Ronan saying, Chazza, I don't think Hamilton would have any chance, as I remember the rules state any cars and not all cars must overtake. So it was at the discretion of the race director to decide it. I'm not sure what you said there is entirely correct. It's a difficult rule to remember, but I'm pretty sure the rule at the time, I don't know if it's been changed since then, but the rule at the time, I'm pretty sure, was that you had to wait a full lap before you allowed lapped cars to overtake. You couldn't allow lapped cars to overtake and restart on the same lap. I thought that was the issue with that. And the argument is, and I think it's the correct argument, that because there wasn't enough time to allow lapped cars to overtake, the race should have ended under a safety car. That's my interpretation of why Lewis Hamilton was screwed in that instance. But yeah. Keep your comments coming. Let me hear what your predictions are for this race and what your thoughts are ahead of this Grand Prix. I am just going to quickly post a link of the stream out one final time before we get into this race. Come join us here to watch along a crucial race in Brazil. And there you go. So hopefully we'll get some more people hopping on in the next few minutes or so. But yeah, half an hour to go until the race is underway in Brazil. An absolute crucial one for the World Championship. But I think what I'll do quickly is I'm gonna mute myself, have a quick drink again, and then probably read out a few more comments, and then we are going to do a quick roundup of the teams, and just quickly go through what is to be expected of the teams in this Grand Prix, what results the teams could get realistically today. And then I will once again go through what my race prediction is, and then we'll read any final comments out before the race gets underway. So yeah, I'll just quickly mute myself, have another drink, and then get into a few more comments before lights out. Right. So let's see what happens. What am I on about? Let's see what comments we have. Crystal saying, good evening all. Amazing job by Laurent McKees to get Max within a glimpse of the World Championship, to be honest. Yeah. Red Bull, they've done a good job in improving the car in these last few races or so, but they are still directly responsible for why Max has not been able to win the championship this year, because the car earlier in the season was just nowhere near good enough, I'm afraid. Looney Classics saying, Shazza, if Lewis sues the FIA over the final race, they cannot talk about his mistakes in Baku and other races because that has nothing to do with Massey and nothing to do with Massey not following the rules. When you go to court, the argument is over the merits of the event. Hamilton going off in Baku has nothing to do with Massey not following the rules in Abu Dhabi. True, but we all know, and I don't know if this would be exposed if let's say Lewis did sue the FIA over that Grand Prix in Abu Dhabi. What do you call it? Obviously, Lewis, if he was to sue the FIA over just that Grand Prix, he's not suing them just so he can have the win in Abu Dhabi rightfully given to him. It's all about the championship in regards to him being awarded that win. But I don't actually know if it's even possible to take the FIA to court over one particular race. If it is, and Lewis was to win that particular case, then again, it would open the floodgates, because there are so many examples where drivers and teams have been, you could argue, I wouldn't say cheated out of races, but you know what I mean, where you could require or request basically a review and get the result changed to what it maybe rightfully should have been, and challenge, past disqualifications and penalties. And so, yeah, I would rather just not have any of these court cases, because I don't want any sporting event to be decided in a court. And ideally that should be the case, but because the FIA has not dealt with these two instances previously and not dealt with it in a fair, honest way, in terms of that Singapore 2008 result, Renault and Alonso should have been disqualified from that race at minimum, which, I mean, wouldn't have changed anything for Felipe Massa, because what do you call it? It would have just gave Lewis Hamilton 2 extra points. Um, and yeah, what happened in Abu Dhabi in 2021? Again, Hamilton should have had that win if if all had been stuck by with the regulations. But I just hope that I with this whole situation, I just hope that the right decision comes out in terms of the Felipe Massa court case. I hope that he doesn't win the case, because I don't think he has a proper case really to win, and I hope that will spell the end to the possibility of taking the FIA to court over certain races and all of that. Another thing, though, to consider with that Singapore race is, even if Renault didn't, break the rules and cheat the way they did, you still cannot guarantee that Felipe's fuel hose issue wouldn't have happened. You can't guarantee that. It still easily could have happened, even if he, led the race out comfortably and then pitted as normal when he was going to pit. So, in regards to that race, that's also another thing I think that goes against Felipe, is that, again, with the fuel hose thing, you cannot guarantee that that incident doesn't happen, because we've seen it happen multiple times in Formula One history at random, and that's when it does happen at random. Lily Classic saying it is possible for Lewis to sue over one race. European law allows it. Ronan saying, what European law? Also, the High Court of the UK is not subject to European law. Yeah, I don't think the High Court in the UK is subject to European law. So, yeah, that's why I don't think that will happen. Anyway, enough of court cases and all that stuff, because let's be honest, we don't care about that stuff. Let me just quickly do a roundup of the teams and what we expect of the teams in this Grand Prix and where they should all be. Starting with McLaren, and simply they must win the race today. They've got the fastest car, they've got pole position. If they don't win today, it is a complete failure. Realistically, Lando should win the race today. If he doesn't, it'll be either because of a really bad bit of luck for him, or he will, put in as bad of a performance, let's say, as he did a year ago at this circuit. McLaren really on pace should finish first and second, but because Piastri is still underperforming, that is not as simple as it sounds. But if they come away with at least the race win, they'll be happy, and they should come away with the race win, because they've got clearly the fastest car for this race and have pole position, which is the perfect place to execute such pace. For Red Bull, obviously Max Verstappen starting from the pit lane. As long as Max finishes in the top 7 or 8, I think that's the best they can do realistically. Verstappen, I think if he gets a bit of luck, maybe he can challenge for a podium and maybe even finish on the podium, but I would be amazed if he gets anywhere near Lando Norris, even with a lucky safety car. So, yeah, Verstappen, too far back on the grid, I think, to really fight for the win. If it was like a proper wet race today, like we had last year, then who knows? Because in the wet with Verstappen, he's capable of basically anything. But in the dry, I just don't think the car is fast enough for him to do what would be basically the unthinkable. So, yeah, Verstappen heading most likely for only a few points. Ferrari haven't looked at times always this great or that great this weekend, but I do think they've got a pretty decent position for this race to be able to get a podium. Leclerc's in third place, and the reason I say that Ferrari are in a decent position for the podium today is, one, Leclerc is outperforming Piastri this weekend. So Leclerc, even though Piastri has the faster car, Leclerc, if he can perform at his best today, like we've seen in the last couple races, I don't see why Leclerc can't keep Piastri behind. But also, we have seen in the last 2 races that Ferrari have been faster than Mercedes in the race. If that continues today, then Leclerc has a great chance of finishing at least third, maybe even second. So I think for Ferrari, as long as they finish on the podium, that is a good result. If they don't finish on the podium, they'll be disappointed, rightly so, but sadly for Ferrari, they're not going to win this Grand Prix and most likely finish the season without a race win. For Mercedes, they have got Kimi Antonelli in second place. I think for Mercedes as well, as long as they finish on the podium, I think that is a good enough result for them. For George Russell, he's down in 6th. Clearly slower than Antonelli's been this weekend. I think for Russell, as long as he finishes in the top 5, I think that'd be good enough. He clearly, I don't think, has the pace to finish in the top 3 unless he suddenly finds a lot more performance today. But Antonelli is the main man for Mercedes this weekend, and as long as he keeps on it, then a podium should be possible. Now to the midfield teams. Aston Martin did not get the best out of their car yesterday. Alonso, I think, could have been a few positions higher on the grid than he actually is. He didn't do the best lap in Q2, and that really did cost him. So a points finish is definitely possible, but the issue is you've got faster cars behind in Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen, who are pretty likely to finish ahead of him. So it's going to be close as to whether he finishes in the points. He's going to have a good start, I reckon, to really make his case for a points finish good. But it's going to be really close, I feel, between him and the 2 Racing Bull cars. So we'll see, ultimately, where he ends up. But definitely, I think they've definitely got the pace for points. But again, it just depends on the start and where they shake out as to whether they could properly go and get that. Pierre Gasly up in 9th place. An amazing weekend he's had. He scored a point in the sprint race. Gasly, obviously amazing yesterday in qualifying, but I would be very surprised if he finished in the points today. I just don't think the Alpine car is fast enough, and again, there are faster cars behind, which I'm pretty sure will beat him today, such as Hamilton, Verstappen, Alonso, probably one of the Williamses as well. So, yeah, Gasly, if he finishes in the points, then that's easily one of the best drives of the day. For Haas, keep your eye on Oliver Behrman, just like we all did in Mexico. He should be a lot higher on the grid than he is. And he is the dark horse today for a possible surprise big result. Keep your eye on Behrman. He could be, if there's going to be a surprise contender for a podium, I think Behrman really could be that driver. So keep your eye on him. And also, given how quick Haas look, keep your eye on Esteban Ocon starting last from the pit lane. I am pretty confident he'll make a lot of progress from there. Racing Bulls, 5th and 7th on the grid. An absolutely brilliant result for them. Racing Bulls have been stunning in qualifying this year. Not always, though, great in the races, which is why I think they'll fall back in the race today. And I think they'll finish 9th and 10th. They'll still, that's still some points for the team, but I just don't think they have, in a race situation, enough pace to maintain that position. I hope they do, but I just don't think they will. So yeah, I think they'll be falling back, but still grabbing a few points, crucially, for their championship fight for 6th. Williams didn't have the best qualifying. They're 12th and 15th on the grid. I do think, though, like Aston Martin, there is potentially more pace in the Williams car than what has been shown. So keep your eye on Williams. I think if there's a team outside the top 10 from the midfield that could score points, they are definitely one of them. So keep your eye on both Albon and Sainz, who have not been too bad this weekend. And finally, going on to Sauber, Nico Hülkenberg starting P10. What a qualifying he had to get into the top 10. Like Gasly, though, I just don't see the car being fast enough for him to stay in the top 10. If he does somehow finish in the top 10, then yeah, what a result from him. Keep your eye, though, on Gabriel Bortoleto starting at the back of the grid in 18th. Obviously, 2 cars starting in the pit lane behind him. But the Sauber clearly is fast enough to get a few positions up the grid. So keep your eye on Bortoleto. Obviously, home race, and the car is a lot faster than where he is on the grid. So hopefully we'll make some progress from there. But a quick reminder, here is my race prediction for the Sao Paulo Grand Prix. Lando Norris, I think, wins the race and dominates the race from Leclerc 2nd, Piastri 3rd, Antonelli 4th, Russell 5th, Behrman 6th, Hamilton 7th, Verstappen 8th, Hadjar 9th, and Liam Lawson, I think, will finish in P10. So that's my prediction, guys, for this Sao Paulo Grand Prix. And we have got just 13 minutes to go until the race gets underway in Brazil. So if you've got any final predictions, make sure to put it in the live chat. And I will make sure to read out your final predictions for the race. And again, make sure to vote in the poll at the top of the chat if you haven't, to let me know who you think wins or most likely wins this race. But yeah, not long now until we get underway for what should be a pretty exciting Grand Prix. And looking at the track, it is, very overcast. There is rain in the air, but it is not currently falling. So looks like we're in for a dry start, and then maybe we'll see a shower or two in the middle of the race. But it looks like it's going to be a dry start. And I'd imagine most drivers will be starting on the medium compound tyre. Crystal talking about the guy with the big hair who won't cut his hair until Man U get 5 straight wins. Yeah, that guy's never going to get his hair cut. Never going to happen. I can't remember the last time Man United won 5 straight league games. Probably at least 3 or 4 years ago. So he might be waiting another year or two. But it'd be funny if there is. It might even become a thing at this rate if there's a Ferrari fan out there attempting the same thing who hasn't cut their hair since Mexico, since the Mexican Grand Prix of last year, and is refusing to cut their hair until their next win, which could be, they could be waiting another 6 months at least, and maybe even another year. Remember the last drought they had for race wins was about 2.5 years from it was what, toward the end of 2019, like September 2019 until March 2022 was the last drought they had. So could happen again. Ferrari, it's happened a few times for Ferrari in the last 10, 15 years where they've gone a year and a half, 2 years or more without winning a race. They went nearly 2 years without winning a race between, I think, 2013 and 2015. And then they won, I think, the Singapore Grand Prix in 2015 and then had to wait another year and a half to win their next one. So, yeah, we'll see if that becomes a thing. It probably will at this rate. Yanni saying, I really like the 2026 cars, but they should have V8s. Yeah, it'd be better if they had some louder engines. I think hopefully we will get to that later on with these regulations and these cars, but let's see. In terms of the racing, let's see what the cars are like next year. But from what the drivers have said, they've they don't sound too optimistic about what it's going to be like next season. But I mean, the drivers tend to complain about most things, so yeah. Addy or Addick saying, everyone, I didn't watch yesterday qualifying. Can someone tell me what happened? Like, I know Max had some problems with the car, but like, what happened? Well, he had problems with the balance of the car, and that's quite simple as to why he's 16th. It wasn't, again, there was no power issues, there was no floor damage, front wing damage, anything like that. The car, because of its balance issues, is why Max Verstappen could only qualify 16th. And if Max could only qualify 16th in your car, then that just absolutely guarantees that your car is the slowest in qualifying, because obviously Max is the best on the grid. But anyway, let me finish up the results of the poll, which has been running for a few hours. 272 votes. Thank you guys for that. And I asked you guys who will win the Sao Paulo Grand Prix today. And 51% of you say Lando Norris, which I agree. I think he will win. 21% for Charles Leclerc. 17% for Kimi Antonelli. And 11% for Oscar Piastri in terms of who voted for who, in terms of who you guys thought was going to win the race today. As we have got just over 5 minutes left until lights out in Brazil. So let me just find a couple more comments and then we will get into this race. Derek Gara saying Verstappen is a bottle job. Time for Max to be promoted to Racing Bulls. Interestingly, we thought that Isaac Hadjar was going to be confirmed by now to be racing for Red Bull next year. Still hasn't been confirmed, and apparently Red Bull is still considering who they're going to put alongside Max next year. But it really should be Hadjar, because he's been clearly the best out of, him, Tsunoda and Lawson. Or maybe they'll finally realise that they've got a fundamental issue with the second Red Bull car compared to Max, and they'll keep Hadjar in the Racing Bulls to save his career, because that second Red Bull seat is cursed, quite frankly, at the moment. So hello there to Kizil Warden. Chris was saying, Ferrari Fan TV, Norris World Championship before Leclerc. Right. I think, and yeah, Astra saying Red Bull should just run one car. If they did, I mean, their championship position wouldn't be any different. And actually, if you go look at 2023, where they dominated so much, I think they would have still won the Constructors' Championship, even if they had just run with Verstappen. So, They may as well at this point, because it's not actually costing them anything if they did that. Anyway, let's get into a final few important bits of data and stats before this important race. Here is the championship standings coming into this Grand Prix. Lando Norris, after his sprint win and Oscar Piastri's DNF in the sprint, is 9 points clear coming into this Sao Paulo race. Max Verstappen third, 39 points behind. He's going to need a miracle if he's going to be still in the fight after this Grand Prix. George Russell then in fourth. Leclerc 50 points behind in fifth. Leclerc might be able to close the gap in that fight for fourth after this Grand Prix. Lewis Hamilton sixth. Antonelli seventh. Albon eighth. Hulkenberg ninth. And Fernando Alonso, after the sprint, is now in the top 10 of the championship. But whether he'll stay there after today, who knows? On the constructor side, McLaren obviously were champions a few races ago. Mercedes, after the sprint, are now up to second, 6 points clear of Ferrari. Red Bull are in fourth. Red Bull still less than 20 points away from second. Williams in fifth. Racing Bull sixth, but level on points with Aston Martin. Absolutely crucial in terms of who scores points for Racing Bulls or Aston Martin. Haas in eighth, only 10 points behind. With Bellman's pace, though, I think they could close that gap down quite a bit today. And then Alpine obviously scored a point in the sprint, and they are last. Sauber, obviously, you must remember they are 2 points behind Haas in ninth. But here are some key stats regarding the front-running teams coming to this Grand Prix. McLaren, their last race win in Brazil was in 2012 with Jenson Button. McLaren have only taken 2 wins in Brazil in the last 20 years. Button in 2012 and Juan Pablo Montoya took his final Formula One win at this circuit in September of 2005. Last year, it was an absolutely disastrous race, 6th and 8th. Surely they'll do a lot better today. For Red Bull, they of course won this Grand Prix so brilliantly last year with Max Verstappen. They've took 3 wins in Brazil in the last 10 years. Be incredible if somehow Max won today. And yeah, 1st and 11th it was a year ago. What can Max do today? Ferrari's last win in Brazil was 8 years ago with Sebastian Vettel in 2017. That is, though, Ferrari's only win in Brazil in the last 10 years. And actually, you have to go back to 2008 for the previous race win for the Ferrari team in Brazil. So only 2 wins here in the last 17 years. Last year, it was 5th and a DNF for Ferrari. Can they do better than that? And for Mercedes, their last win here was 3 years ago with George Russell. They've been the most successful team here in Brazil in the last 10 years. They've won 5 of the races here since 2015. And last year, 4th and 10th. Can they better that and get onto the podium? Let's now, though, get into your starting grid for the Sao Paulo Grand Prix. On the front row, a very young front row, Lando Norris and Kimi Antonelli. On the second row, Charles Leclerc and Oscar Piastri. On the third row, Isaac Hadjar and George Russell. The fourth row, Liam Lawson and Oliver Bearman. And then completing the top 10, Pierre Gasly and Nico Hulkenberg. Just outside of the top 10, Fernando Alonso and Alex Albon. 13th and 14th, Lewis Hamilton and Lance Stroll. 15th and 16th, Carlos Sainz and Franco Colapinto. On the penultimate row, Yuki Tsunoda and Gabriel Bortoleto. And then both starting from the pit lane, the 2 men who were 1st and 2nd in this Grand Prix last year, Max Verstappen and Esteban Ocon. But we await now the beginning of this Grand Prix as the tyre blankets come off, and looks like most people on the mediums. Oliver Bearman looks like he's on the soft compound tyre. And it looks like one of the Racing Bull cars is as well. Antonelli is on the soft tyre as the formation lap begins right now. So yeah, Antonelli on the front rows on the soft tyre, so they are going for it at Mercedes. And we've got quite a few cars on the soft tyre. Lawson, Behrman and Gasly also on the soft. So let me just update that. Alonso in 11th is the highest placed runner on the hard compound tyre. So we've only got 5 drivers in the top 10 on the medium tyre. And then Albon is on the medium. Lewis Hamilton is on the soft tyre. So they're doing what I hoped they were doing. Really, they can't do anything else. Both Aston Martins are on the hard compound tyre to start. Carlos Sainz is starting on the soft, as Lando Norris is already midway through the formation lap. Obviously quite a short lap this. Yuki Tsunoda in the Red Bull is on the hard tyre. And then Bortoleto is on the soft, and both Verstappen and Ocon are on the hard compound tyre. So this really is making for a great possible race, because we've got lots of drivers on different tyres. We've got quite a few out there on the soft, quite a few on the medium, and we've got, I think, 5 or 6 drivers on the hard tyre. So real mix and match through the field. By the way, make sure to smash the like button. We're on 50 likes. Let's try and get up to 70 or 80 plus likes if we can. But will that soft tyre for Antonelli work? It's a very short run into the first corner. Remember, Lando Norris did lose the lead of this race into turn 1 last year. Obviously, that was in wet conditions. He absolutely, though, must win this race today if he wants to win the championship. It's in his hands, as Antonelli points his car towards the McLaren of Norris. That's now the final few cars line up. And now Verstappen and Ocon entering the pit lane. And here we go. This race is crucial in deciding the destiny of the championship. Will it do so today? 3 lights, 4, 5 lights. And it is go in Brazil. And Antonelli gets a decent start, but Lando's still ahead and comes across and cuts off Antonelli. Leclerc goes for the inside line. Hadjar's had a good start, trying to go round the outside of Piastri. Piastri avoids a collision, but is only just about ahead of Hadjar, as everyone else gets through just fine. No collisions in the background, but lots of slipstreaming, as Russell's had a poor start. He's been overtaken by Lawson, and Pierre Gasly is trying to go around the outside of him at turn 5, but Russell stays ahead. So the soft tyres working for the 2 Racing Bull cars. So Lawson is up to 6th. Gasly's up to 8th. And then it's Behrman 9th. And Alonso is side by side with Hulkenberg, as Hulkenberg gets squeezed out. And that allows the Williams of Albon to get through. So Hulkenberg's lost a couple positions. Yellow flag. And it's Gabriel Bortoleto. He's gone straight on into the barrier at turn 9, I think, or turn 10. So that might be a virtual safety car. He has pulled away. So he's not stopped out on the track. But yeah, that's an awful start, as Oliver Behrman has just overtaken Gasly. So Behrman up to 8th, as Carlos Sainz has had a good start. He's just gone up to 12th, and we've got a full safety car. And that gives me a chance to get the order correct. So Hulkenberg 13th, Stroll, Tsunoda 14th, Stroll 15th. There's, Lewis Hamilton has lost his front wing. He has no front wing whatsoever. So is that why Bortoleto went into the barriers? As Bortoleto, the reason we've got a full safety car is because Bortoleto has stopped on circuit and is getting out of the car. What a disaster of a home race. At least it can only get better next year. But yeah, that is a horror for him. As is a replay of the start. Great start from Norris. And then Isaac Hadjar tried to go around the outside of Piastri at turn 1, but thankfully didn't make a silly dive. And then, yeah, they all got away pretty nicely. There's a bit of slipstreaming behind Piastri. Hadjar tried to have a go, but was realistically never going to happen. Here's a replay from Lewis Hamilton's on board of his start. And Hamilton positioning for the outside there. And, Hamilton got hit into the first corner by someone. Someone tagged his rear left tyre. But he got away still okay. Here's Bortoleto. And actually, it was... he had a collision with Lance Stroll. He tried to be on the outside of Stroll, but collided with Stroll's rear tyre and went into the barriers. Bortoleto saying on the radio Stroll pushed him off, but that is absolutely not the case. And there you go. That's why Hamilton broke his front wing. He pulled out from behind Colapinto, but did it too late. He hit the rear tyre of Colapinto. That's a poor mistake from Hamilton. That's exactly what Alonso did with Ocon back in, I think, 2022. So Hamilton will have to come into the pit lane for a new front wing. Yuki Tsunoda has pitted. Tsunoda now down to 18th. So Max Verstappen is now 16th, which is where he qualified. As the cars going through the escape road that cuts off turn 10 as they clear away the salver and deal with the debris. But let me just update who is on what compound. So Antonelli still on the soft. Hadjar and Lawson on the soft in 5th and 6th. Russell in 7th on the medium. And then Behrman and Gasly on the soft. Alonso on the hard tyre in 10th. Albon in 11th is on the medium. Carlos Sainz is on the soft tyre. As we're looking at Lewis Hamilton slowly making his way back to the back of the pack on lap 4 now. Behind the safety car. And here's a replay of Hamilton's pit stop where they had to also clear debris from under or around the tyres. It was an 18.5-second pit stop. Thankfully for him, though, we're under a safety car. Hold on. Hulkenberg is on the medium. Lance Stroll on the hard. Colapinto on the medium. As we're seeing a replay of Carlos Sainz at the start, and he was the one who collided with Lewis Hamilton. Thankfully, though, it's just tyre to tyre. But that, helped Sainz a lot. Because it cleared Hamilton out of the way on the outside, and then he could focus on what was ahead of him. As here's Tsunoda on the outside, and you had Hamilton right ahead of him. Tsunoda managed to get ahead. It was actually a decent start for Tsunoda, but he's had to pit. I don't know if Red Bull have done that just to get him out of the way of Verstappen or what. But I'm assuming that everyone below Colapinto is still on the hard compound tyre. And Bortoleto, sadly, is out. of this race. So only 19 cars remain. Here's a replay of Gasly, who nearly went right round the outside of Russell at turn 4, but Russell got it back. Good hard racing. And then Behrman, brilliant move down the inside of Gasly. And Behrman had to make that overtake because that the car he is in is a lot quicker than the Alpine. So, lap 5, we're still under a safety car. And let me just get rid of these bot accounts. Unfortunately, Rook is not here. So, yeah, sorry about this. So I'll try and have a look at that every few minutes if I can to just make sure that I can hide those users. Anyway, safety car is in at the end of this lap and the safety car has already pulled away. And Lando Norris has now become the safety car. But the one thing he does not want to do is go too early as he's already climbing the hill on the exit of Jinsao. He's got to wait until pretty much the start-finish line before he gets this race back underway. He does not want to let Antonelli get a run on him into turn 1, especially on those soft tyres. There you go. He goes for it. And we begin lap 6 as Piastri trying to go down the inside of Antonelli. Will he collide? Yes, he does. Collides with Antonelli. Collides with Leclerc. Leclerc's lost his front left wheel as the wheel almost comes bouncing onto the track. Thankfully, it fell away. But Leclerc has had his car destroyed by Piastri. What a disaster for Ferrari. But Piastri is now up to 2nd. Hadjar up to 4th as the two racing bull cars side by side trying to pass Antonelli, who I think might have damage. And Verstappen now up to 13th. But Leclerc is... I don't know if he's officially out of this race or if he's just lost his tyre, but I think he pretty much is. As still cars side by side, Albon and Gasly side by side for 8th place. As Leclerc down now to 19th. As Leclerc, I think, saying the front left suspension is gone. Also, Lance Stroll is down in 18th, so he's clearly had a contact or something. But on lap 7, Lando Norris leads from Oscar Piastri 2nd. But I fear for Piastri that he's going to get a penalty because I think he clearly caused that accident with Antonelli. And Leclerc, as there is Leclerc on the side of the track, out of the car and out of the race. What a shame. But the top 10 is now Norris, Piastri, Antonelli, Hadjar, Lawson, Russell, Behrman, Gasly, Alonso. Well, no, Gasly, Albon, and Alonso. Here's a replay. Down to turn 1. Piastri absolutely went for it. And then locked up, went into the side of Antonelli. And Antonelli went straight into the front left wheel of Leclerc. And then we've seen a further replay. And maybe you could argue Piastri was squeezed, but I think Piastri's going to get a penalty for that. I think he's quite clearly caused the collision. Here's a replay. Leclerc went for the outside line, and what a smack that was to the front left suspension. Absolutely destroyed his suspension instantly. Here's a replay from Piastri's on board. Yeah, I think he's going to get a penalty for that. He says he left me no space, which I think, yeah, you could argue that, but I don't think Antonelli squeezed him to that point. I think Piastri's going to get a penalty there, which he does not need. As this is Max Verstappen, who was 13th. He's now 17th, so I don't know if he's pitted under the virtual safety car. We're now on lap 8. Yeah, Max is now 18th, and yeah, he's pitted. So Verstappen getting rid of those hard compound tyres. So the top 10 on lap 8 with virtual safety car, it's Norris, Piastri, Antonelli, Hadjar, Lawson, Russell, Behrman, Gasly, Albon, and Alonso. And then it's Sainz, Hülkenberg, Colapinto, Tsunoda, Ocon, Hamilton, Stroll, and Verstappen, and Leclerc is out of this race. Max, by the way, is now on a set of mediums, so he's got the hard tyres out the way. He doesn't need to use the hard tyres again if he doesn't want to. But let me just update the tyres if I can, as we've still got a virtual safety car on track. They're just trying to clear Leclerc's car away and any possible debris that might be on the racetrack. And VSC is now ending. And Oscar Piastri right on the back of Norris as they go over the line. Lap 9, and Piastri, is he going to send it at turn 1? No, he's too far behind. But on lap 9, it is a McLaren 1-2 as Esteban Ocon now pits. Sainz has just overtaken Fernando Alonso as Russell has just overtaken Liam Lawson for 5th. At turn 1, as Behrman and Gasly changing positions. Gasly has lost position to Albon. All going off in this race. What a crazy race so far. So it's currently Norris, Piastri, Antonelli, Hadjar, Russell, Lawson, Behrman, Gasly, Albon, and Sainz. Both Williamses in the top 10 currently. So let me just update who is on what tyre compound for the top 10. And then I'll do the rest of the order when I can. So there you go. If there's any news regarding Piastri getting a possible penalty, I'll let you guys know. Hasn't come up yet on the screen as to whether it's noted or not. As they're all now settling in, as Tsunoda and Stroll incident at turn 8 noted for a collision. That's why Lance Stroll then is down the order. As Verstappen is already up to 16th place on lap 10 as Esteban Ocon has pitted. So outside of the top 10, you've got Alonso 11th, Hülkenberg 12th, Tsunoda, Colapinto, Hamilton, Verstappen, Stroll, and Ocon. Let me just update what tyres they're on outside of the top 10. Alonso is on the hard tyre. And then you've got Hülkenberg, Tsunoda, and Colapinto on the medium. And then Lewis Hamilton on the hard tyre. And then Verstappen and Ocon on the medium. Stroll is still on the hard tyre. I don't think Lance Stroll is actually even pitted. As we're on lap 11, Lando Norris leading this race by about 1.3, 1.4 seconds as Lewis Hamilton is trying to overtake Franco Colapinto, but Colapinto defends hard and keeps ahead. As Russell on the medium, which is working really well for him, he's right up behind Hadjar. Thankfully for Antonelli, it doesn't look like Antonelli's got any damage because he's only 1.2 seconds behind Piastri as Max Verstappen does the fastest lap of the race yeah, we've got a big DRS train behind Isaac Hadjar. That's Russell in a faster car and on faster tyres. On lap 11. And now on lap 12, Norris starting to pull away. He's now 1.6 seconds clear. As George Russell trying to pass Hadjar into turn 1. Hadjar defends though. Lawson in the background under pressure from Behrman. But Russell is going to get the move done here through turn 3 and down to turn 4. Pulls alongside, and George Russell is up to 4th. So Mercedes 3rd and 4th. With Leclerc out of action, this is good for Mercedes because I think now they're very likely to finish on the podium with at least one of their cars. As Verstappen is stuck behind Lewis Hamilton. And the problem for Max is Hamilton, whose rear end of his car is all over the place, is Hamilton is stuck right up behind Colapinto, so Max won't have a DRS advantage to use. As a 10-second penalty for Tsunoda for causing a collision. What will they do with Oscar Piastri? Well, I haven't seen whether Piastri, the incident at turn 1's even been noted yet. As they start lap 13. And down the inside goes Oliver Behrman on Liam Lawson. What an overtake. That is the definition of a dive bomb. And Verstappen has done the same to Hamilton and he's through. So Verstappen up to 15th. On the medium compound of tyre. Verstappen looks pretty quick. So, there you go. And also looking pretty quick is Oliver Behrman. If he can pass Lawson that quickly and that well, then I think he'll be passing Isaac Hadjar pretty soon. And he's only 1.2 seconds behind. Out front, Lando Norris about 2 seconds clear of Oscar Piastri. That's a replay of Tsunoda spinning Stroll around. And yeah, fully deserved penalty. Tsunoda was not even anywhere near making a move on Stroll when he tapped the rear end of his car and Stroll went around. As that is Max Verstappen overtaking Colapinto into turn 1 on lap 14. He's doing 1 car per lap at the minute, and he needs to keep that rate up. The next car, thankfully, for him to overtake is his teammate. So hopefully, from his perspective, his teammate will let him through pretty quickly. As yeah, Lawson now really holding up Pierre Gasly. Racing Bulls, I've said this, their race pace is not that great. They've always quick in qualifying, but there is a drop-off in race situations, and now Lawson under serious threat. As Sainz and Hamilton incident noted at turn 1, as Lewis on the radio says, mate, I'm going to crash out here. I'll keep trying, but the car's undrivable. The rear end looks like it's stepping out in every corner, so you might have some damage. Or the car's just that shit, which is very possible. As Tsunoda on lap 15 has just let Max through, so Max is now up to 13th. Next target for Verstappen is Nico Hülkenberg, who's only about 8 tenths ahead of him. Out front, Lando Norris, 2.2 seconds. Clear of Oscar Piastri as Lewis Hamilton pits. And Hamilton will drop to last place. Hamilton now on, I think, a set of mediums. So let me just update all of that tyre stuff. Yeah, the battle we're looking at the minute is a Gasly and Lawson. Behrman is still right up behind Hadjar, but he just can't get within a second of him at the minute. He's right on the cusp of getting DRS. Needs another couple tenths of a second and he'll do it. As Lando Norris nearly 3 seconds clear of Piastri now. If Piastri does get a penalty, which I don't think he is going to get a penalty now because I think they would have at least noted it by now. But if he did, then he would be in a net 4th place. As Hamilton and Colapinto incident at turn 15 noted. That's obviously Hamilton going into the back of Colapinto. I don't think they're going to do anything about that. Here is Verstappen right behind Hülkenberg. Down to turn 4. Can he get the move done? No, he can't. And that's going to hurt Max. And now Max is properly in a DRS train that goes all the way up to 7th place. So this is not going to be easy for Max Verstappen. And this will hamper his progress, even though he is technically on fresher tyres, only by a few laps. As down to turn 10, Max closing in, but whether he's close enough to Hülkenberg to go for a move down to turn 1, I think he will be. And there you go. 10-second time penalty for Oscar Piastri for causing a collision. And that is a fair penalty. He absolutely caused a collision. And as there you go, Verstappen down the inside of Hülkenberg. And he gets it done. He is so good at that dive bomb move. And Verstappen up to 12th. For Piastri, though, if he was to drop 10 seconds right now, he would drop pretty much right into that battle with Lawson, Gasly, and Albon. So they've got to keep Piastri out there to build a gap to the midfield. But that, I think, is going to cost Oscar Piastri the chance to finish on the podium. And could be championship ending when it's all said and done. As no further investigation for Sainz and Hamilton for what happened at turn 1. Max's next potential victim is, what do you call it? Is Fernando Alonso on the hard tire. Max gets a fantastic exit and will overtake Alonso. May as well really put him up into that position. As Oliver Behrman pits on end of lap 17 going into 18. And Carlos Sainz pits as well from 10th. So Verstappen now up to 9th. This is about the time you want to be pitting if you're on the soft tyre. So that's going to trigger the pit stop phase to begin, which that'll help Max Verstappen's cause even more. Carlos Sainz drops to last place. Behrman drops to 16th. What will Racing Bulls do? They've got to cover that off with Hadjar. And here's a replay of the Piastri incident. And again, I know some people may say Piastri was squeezed, but I don't think he was. I mean, he was to a degree squeezed, but not to the point where he is absolved of blame. Maybe 10 seconds is a bit harsh, but he definitely deserved at least a penalty. As on lap 19, Lando Norris nearly 4 seconds clear of his teammate. As Hadjar now pits to cover that off. Gasly pits as well. And Hadjar released. Has he covered off Oliver Behrman? Here comes Behrman. And I think, yep, Behrman's got him. So Oliver Behrman is up And he is past Hadjar, so he's in a net 5th place. As Gasly comes out in 16th. And Hadjar now 15th. So Hadjar is, in a net 6th place. And then you've got, thankfully for Behrman, his teammate is in between himself and Hadjar. So Behrman can now focus on getting up the road. On lap 20 we are now. As we're looking at Max Verstappen, who's about to overtake Alex Albon. Not going to overtake him yet. He's too far behind, I think, into turn 1. But it's going to happen as Liam Lawson now pits. By the way, with the tyre information on screen, I will correct that. As Nib in the chat saying he's fully on the inside. Antonelli comes across, racing incident all fucking day. Well, we'll have to agree to disagree. But some paper flying across the track there. I thought that was a flag. Lawson has also been jumped. Well, he was behind Behrman anyway. But he's been jumped, Lawson, just about by Pierre Gasly. So Lawson also losing out. So let me just update that. So Lawson now in 16th. So Racing Bulls have gone from a net 5th and 7th to now a net 6th and 8th. As Max Verstappen surely on this occasion is going to overtake Alex Albon. And yes, he is. Albon not going to defend. Albon is clearly trying to go long into this race, as Williams always do. And that's Hulkenberg up the inside of Fernando Alonso. Brilliant move. And the Hulk moves on. He's now in 7th place. Yuki Tsunoda right behind Alonso. Alonso's on the hard tyre, which doesn't seem to be working, really. As we're looking at Gasly, who's right behind Isaac Hadjar. Hadjar, the reason he's under pressure from Gasly is because Hadjar is stuck behind Behrman's teammate, Ocon. But let me update quickly who's on what tyre. So Max Verstappen, obviously through other people pitting and his own progress, is now up to 5th place. And then you've got Albon in 6th, who hasn't pitted. Hulkenberg 7th, hasn't pitted. Alonso 8th, hasn't pitted. Tsunoda 9th, hasn't pitted. Colapinto in 10th, has not pitted. And then you've got Stroll in 11th, who hasn't pitted. And then Efron below Stroll is on the medium compound tyre. As on lap 22, Kimi Antonelli pits, gets rid of the soft tyres. They got those soft tyres to go a bit longer than the others did, so good job there. But he will come out behind Lance Stroll in 11th place. So we'll have some work to do to clear some traffic. McLaren are probably going to have to respond to that pit stop in the next couple laps, because Antonelli was only about 3 seconds behind Piastri. Remember, by the way, with Verstappen, technically he has pitted. He pitted early on. So Max, I mean, he's going to pit again, Verstappen. There's no doubt about it. But he's on a few lap fresher and better tyres than he was originally. As both Hadjar and Gasly have just cleared Ocon. And now Liam Lawson the next to clear the Frenchman who finished 2nd at this Grand Prix last year. As there you go, Lawson up the inside of Ocon into turn 10, not wasting any time. So, everyone in the top 6 is on the medium tyre. And then you've got Alonso still out there. Alonso is the highest placed runner on the hard compound tyre, as that is Carlos Sainz now overtaking Esteban Ocon. Tsunoda then in 8th on the medium. Colapinto in 9th on the medium. Stroll now down to 11th. Antonelli has just overtaken him. As Lando Norris now 5 seconds clear of his teammate, and Norris is nearly a pit stop clear of Max Verstappen, who's in 4th. I think that's what McLaren are focusing on, is clearing, at least with Lando Norris, is clearing Max Verstappen from their pit window. Piastri, interestingly, not going to respond to Antonelli's pit stop. But, yeah, everyone from Behrman in 12th down is on the medium compound tyres. That's Antonelli now passing Colapinto. So Antonelli is getting on with it. And is now up to 9th. So Antonelli, I think, pretty much at this point, is in a net 2nd place. As his next target is Tsunoda, who is just over a second behind Alonso. Do watch out for Alonso, because even though the hard tyre has not worked out that well so far, Alonso is going to go probably another 20-25 laps, and he's going to be pretty quick at the end on fresh, probably medium tyres. And we'll be doing only one pit stop, where Behrman, Hadjar, Gasly, Lawson are all, by the looks of it, on a 2-stop. So Alonso is going to come back into it. And also keep your eye on Albon and Hulkenberg, I think also quite clearly on a 1-stop race. As Lando being told, so Lando, the hard tyre does not look good. The soft, probably similar to yesterday. They're basically asking Lando what tyre does he want to go on to. As Tsunoda pits. So Antonelli up to 8th. And let's see where Tsunoda comes out. Tsunoda, I'm pretty sure, is going to come out in 16th or 17th. And he actually comes out last in 18th. As we're looking at Nico Hulkenberg doing such a great job. He's only about 7/10 behind Alex Albon. Hulkenberg's always been pretty good here. Should have won this Grand Prix back in 2012, as Antonelli has got, or Alonso, sorry, has got Antonelli crawling all over the back of him for 7th place. Alonso, I'm sure, will not put up a fight. And yeah, Antonelli, may as well put him up to 7th, because the overtake is happening as Hulkenberg continues to close on Albon. So Antonelli up to 7th. Alonso in 8th now on the hard compound tyre. Behrman has just overtaken Stroll, so Behrman is now 10th. Behrman, though, I'm just trying to see where he is compared to Piastri. Well, he's definitely not in the pit window of Piastri, but he is in the pit window of Russell. So if Russell was to pit now, then Behrman would be in a net, I think, 4th place. But obviously Russell would be on much fresher tyres. As we're on lap 27. Hulkenberg still tucked right up behind. As Tsunoda noted for failing to serve his time penalty, so Red Bull just completely either forgot or deliberately decided not to serve the penalty, so Tsunoda's going to get probably a drive-through penalty or something for that, so Tsunoda's race is done. As Behrman overtakes Colapinto for 9th. And this battle of Albon and Hulkenberg, it's a very important one because, yeah, these two are both on a one-stop strategy, but also these two are at the head of that battle of the one-stop drivers at the head of the midfield pack. And obviously you want to be the number one in that pack. As I think Pierre Gasly just had a go at Isaac Hadjar. And yeah, down to turn one. Hadjar defended to the inside. Gasly went for the outside and got the move done, but then Hadjar got him back down to turn four. So good racing there. Good to see Alpine are pretty quick. As Antonelli now right up with these two battling, Albon and Hulkenberg. Out front, Lando Norris 6 seconds clear of Piastri. George Russell is about almost 14 seconds off the lead. Russell losing half a second a lap to the leader. Max Verstappen is about 20 seconds or just under 20 seconds away from Norris. Max Verstappen is lapping around the same pace as Norris and is lapping quicker than Russell and Piastri. So Max, if he can keep this pace up, even though he's got a pit again, he's putting himself in the conversation maybe for a podium. And then Albon in fifth is about 27 odd seconds off the lead as Lewis Hamilton thought his day couldn't get any worse, but he's been given a 5-second time penalty for causing a collision. As Antonelli onto the pit straight, surely will get past Hulkenberg. And he does. So Antonelli up to 6th. As Alonso gets rid of the hard compound tyres, interestingly. I thought he was going to go a lot longer than that, but he's decided to get rid of them. So maybe he's also doing a 2-stop, but he's just done a very long first stint. As, Antonelli, who of course pitted quite a bit earlier than the others that he's racing. Antonelli is still in a net second once everyone pits. As Alonso comes out in 17th place. But Antonelli is about to overtake Alex Albon. There's only one runner in the top 10 now on the hard tyre, and that's Lance Stroll, who is actually right up behind Colapinto, who also hasn't pitted. As Antonelli up to 5th. His next target is Max Verstappen, 7.5 seconds up the road. As Colapinto and Stroll both pit. On lap 30 of 71, we're not even halfway through this Grand Prix. Still a lot to unfold. But at this pace, for Oscar Piastri, with the 10-second penalty that he's yet to serve, talking of McLaren, they're now coming out in the pits with soft tyres. And Lando Norris told to box. But yeah, Piastri, I think, will be safe from Russell. But it's Verstappen and Antonelli that I think McLaren need to worry about with Oscar. As Lando comes in, great pit stop, 2.2 seconds, and Lando is going to come out in 3rd. Or will he? No, he'll come out in 4th. Because Verstappen is just about to overtake him. Norris still ahead, but the pit lane is slower than the track on the exit. So Norris comes out in 4th place. Lando, though, probably will pit again. So it looks like if that's the move, for everyone who started on the medium to go onto a soft around this time of the race, it looks like we could be having a two-stop race for most cars. And Lando Norris is one of the only drivers now out there on the soft tyre. So Lance Stroll is now down to 18th. Colapinto is now 16th as Lance Stroll just overtaken Tsunoda. So yeah, only 2 cars on track are on soft tyres, and that is Norris and then Colapinto down in 16th. Everyone else is on mediums. There are now no hard tyre runners. The hard tyre proving just a bit too slow. It's obviously durable, but not fast enough compared to the other tyres. As Gasly still stuck right up behind Hadjar. And he's in a Racing Bull sandwich, is Gasly. As Lando Norris is only a second behind Max Verstappen. Here is Albon and Hulkenberg almost side by side. Hulkenberg tries to get a better exit. But Albon keeps ahead. Oliver Behrman is only about, I think, 3 or 4 seconds behind. So I think these two are probably going to pit in the next 2 or 3 laps. So it's crucial for Albon that he stays ahead, as here is Lando Norris already right on the back of Verstappen, and Verstappen I don't think is even going to defend if he stays out. As Piastri stays out on lap 33. Yeah, Verstappen is not going to pit and doesn't make it hard. Lando Norris up to 3rd and heading for a pretty comfortable race win. As still looking at the battle of Hulkenberg and Albon. But Hulkenberg not as close on this occasion. Alonso has just overtaken Hamilton. Hamilton got a penalty. And I think Hamilton is now serving that penalty. He's just come into the pits. So Hamilton drops to last. Ferrari last. And one of their cars is out of the race. What an absolute disaster. And even worse for their Constructors' Championship effort. As 10-second penalty for Tsunoda for failing to sow his time penalty correctly, which, yeah, just absolutely destroys his race. But that's his own fault and the team's fault. Lap 34, Hulkenberg looks a slight bit closer to Alex Albon on this occasion. They're going to be side by side into turn 1. Albon defends to the inside. Hulkenberg takes the outside line. Brilliant overtake by the near 40-year-old Nico Hulkenberg, who is up to 6th place, still hasn't pitted, as Oliver Behrman, who has, is right on the back of these two now. And I wouldn't be surprised if Hulkenberg pushes really hard on this lap and then comes in, as Gasly briefly overtook Hadjar for 9th, but Hadjar's got back past, so I'm assuming Gasly presumably went deep at turn 1, trying to do the move. But even though we haven't got a load of racing at the minute, this is a very interesting race, especially in the midfield. As we know, on lap 35, halfway through this race, and yeah, Gasly went for a dive bomb at turn 1 and just went too deep, I think. No, he got it done, and then Hadjar got him back. As here comes George Russell and Max Verstappen, both pitting the halfway point of this Grand Prix. As Verstappen is going to come out and have to overtake quite a few cars, as Behrman is now up to what is 5th. And yeah, Verstappen is going to come out in 11th place. And Russell is now 7th. So Oliver Behrman, who has pitted, is in a net 4th place. What a race Behrman is having. But yeah, Max Verstappen now down to... He's actually lost position to Sainz, so he's down in 12th. But now, doesn't have to pit again. And he's got half the race left to just push hard. And who knows, maybe he'll end up on the podium. It would be some drive if he ended up on the podium from here, but it's not impossible. As that's a replay of Behrman passing Albon at turn 1. Here is now Russell passing Albon, but Albon is pitting. So Russell up to 6th. Oscar Piastri out front, staying out. 10.5 seconds clear of his teammate. Obviously, Piastri yet to serve a pit stop or his penalty. As George Russell is on the soft tyre. Max Verstappen just overtaken Carlos Sainz, and Albon, by the way, has come out in 16th place on the soft tyre, just behind Lance Stroll. As Russell is right behind Behrman and Hülkenberg. So Behrman's hold on a net 4th, not going to last long because Russell much faster. Faster car, faster tyres. Behrman, though, can he overtake Hülkenberg before he loses position? Hülkenberg's pitting, so yeah, Behrman will go up briefly to 4th. As Max Verstappen passes Liam Lawson for what will now be 8th place as Hülkenberg pits. Hülkenberg he's going to be close between him and Stroll. If he can come out ahead of Stroll, who's got Albon right behind him, that will be crucial for Hülkenberg's race. As Russell passes Behrman at turn 4, Russell now 4th. And Hülkenberg comes out behind Colapinto as Albon passes Stroll. Hülkenberg has come out ahead of Albon, and he's come out actually right behind Colapinto. He's only about half a second clear, though, of Albon, so that's a close battle to keep an eye on, as now Hülkenberg and Albon will come through the field. Theoretically, at least, they should. So, lap 38, as this is Max Verstappen all over the back. Pierre Gasly trying to get out of the slipstream as Isaac Hadjar pits for the second time. So Verstappen now up to 6th. Verstappen only 5.5 seconds behind Behrman. As Hadjar now into the pits and goes on to another set of mediums. And Hadjar is going to come out behind Yuki Tsunoda in 17th place. A lot of work to do. As Lewis Hamilton told to box to retire the car. So both Ferraris out of the Sao Paulo Grand Prix. As Albon very quickly passes Colapinto. So is Hülkenberg. And in terms of that midfield battle, as Piastri now pits, it's between Hülkenberg and Albon as to who finishes at the front of that pack. As Piastri now serving his 10 seconds. And he serves the pit stop. Lewis Hamilton comes in and retires from the race. As Piastri drops to 7th place and is now behind Max Verstappen. But Piastri has a faster car and is on fresher tyres, as Piastri's now 8th, actually. So Piastri, if Piastri wants to get on the podium, he needs to overtake Verstappen and Russell. Lawson and Gasly, obviously, he'll overtake, and they both need to pit again. Behrman as well, he'll overtake easily because Behrman's got to pit again. So Piastri is in a net 5th place, and it's got all the work to do, with just over 30 laps to go. As we're on lap 40 of 71. And the order currently, as Pierre Gasly pits, it is Norris leading from Antonelli, Russell, Behrman, Verstappen, Lawson, Piastri, Ocon now up to 8th. Ocon pitted a while ago, though. But good to see the other Haas in the points. Alonso is now 9th, and Nico Hülkenberg is now in the top 10, obviously on fresh, soft tyres. As Max being told on the radio, we are without a doubt in a race here with Russell and Piastri. Max is only 7 seconds behind Russell. So it's going to be close as to whether Max finishes on the podium. As Piastri here right behind Lawson. I may as well put Piastri ahead of Lawson because he's going to get the overtake done. As Carlos Sainz has pitted yet again and comes out last. We have 3 retirements: Hamilton, Leclerc and Bortoleto. As on lap 41, Piastri passes Lawson for 6th. So, one thing I will do is correct who's on what tyre. So, Lando Norris out front is on the soft, Antonelli on the medium, Russell on the soft, and then Behrman is on the medium. Piastri in 6th is on the soft. And then Alonso, was in 9th. He's now 10th. Hülkenberg is now 9th. He's on the soft tyre. And then you got Albon and Colapinto, 11th and 12th on the soft tyre. And then the rest of the order on the mediums. So now let me just change the positions round and get the lap correct. We're on lap 42 of 71. 30 laps remain of this Sao Paulo Grand Prix. As Gasly, obviously in 16th. Hadjar's just overtaken Tsunoda. As Albon now overtakes Alonso. As Max Verstappen closing in on Behrman. Behrman, though, still holding his own in 4th. Behrman is only 5 seconds away from a podium. Behrman, I'm pretty sure, is going to pit again. And when he does, he should be very quick at the end of this race. As Colapinto has just been overtaken for 12th by Lance Stroll, who started to make his way through the pack. As Piastri asking what the plan is, and McLaren telling him pretty much you need to overtake the cars ahead of you. That's pretty simple. as Oliver Behrman pits. So Verstappen up to 4th, Piastri up to 5th. Where does Behrman come out? He should come out in... will it be in between the two Aston Martins? Yes, it will. Only just. So Behrman is in... Hold on. He's in 11th place, is it? Yep. As that's Isaac Hadjar failing to overtake Colapinto and remonstrating with himself. So on lap 44, Lando Norris in the lead, 7.5 seconds clear of Antonelli. Russell about 5 seconds behind his teammate. As this is a replay of Albon passing Alonso. This is a replay of Sainz overtaking Tsunoda. And also Gasly overtaking Tsunoda. So Gasly 15th. Tsunoda now last. Wasn't the fastest pit stop for Haas. Couple seconds too slow, but I think they'll get away with it. As Colapinto now pits. So Colapinto will come out in last. As I've got to say, Esteban Ocon has gone under the radar. He's up to 7th place now. Doing a good job, as good really as he can do. Remember, Ocon started last of all the runners from the pit lane. So, yeah, Ocon's doing a pretty good job in that car. I know the car's quick, but still. It's not quick enough to the point where he should be easily scoring points from the pit lane. But he's going to have Hülkenberg and Albon on his case very quickly. As everyone from 10th place down is now on the medium compound tyre. As Behrman passes Alonso and enters the top 10. Behrman is... I'm trying to see what the gap is between him and Lawson in 6th. Lawson is about 13 seconds ahead of Behrman. So if Behrman can just get these overtakes done and keep his pace up, Behrman should finish in 6th. Which would be a great result for Haas. Remember, they are hunting down 6th in the championship. And a top 6 finish in the championship would be massive for Haas. They need it. So do Racing Bulls, who are still right in there. Lawson up in 6th. Lawson hasn't pitted yet. I'm wondering if Lawson's going to maybe go for a late pit stop onto the soft or maybe stay out to the end. Piastri saying, I hope you're a bit more optimistic than I am because it doesn't look very pretty from where I'm sat. And yeah, Oscar doesn't seem to be catching the cars ahead quite at the rate that he needs to. He's 3.7 behind Verstappen. And then he's about 8 seconds behind Russell. So he's definitely got the pace to finish on the podium. He just needs to just keep pushing and see where he is at the end. But he's not going to finish in 2nd. Absolutely no way is he going to finish in 2nd unless he just magically finds much more pace from somewhere. So let me just update that Behrman in 10th is actually on the medium tyres. We're looking at Hülkenberg in 8th on the soft. Right up behind Ocon. Crucial positions these are for these teams like Haas and Sauber and Racing Bulls. As we're on lap 47, and Hulkenberg, I'm pretty sure, is going to overtake Ocon here. Ocon defends, but Hulkenberg sweeps around the outside and gets the move done as Behrman at the same time passes Albon as Alonso pits. So Hulkenberg 7th, Ocon 8th, Behrman in 9th. Behrman, I'm pretty sure, will be let by Ocon very quickly. So let me just update that you've got Hulkenberg in 7th and Albon in 10th on the soft, and then pretty much everyone from 6th down to 17th, except for Hulkenberg and Albon, are on the medium, as Hadjar saying, oh my god. Don't shout at me, okay, thank you, he says on the radio, as his team was telling him, just focus, keep your head down. But he's clearly very frustrated in that car. As Alonso has pitted, and yeah, Antonelli pits again, which yeah, I forgot to remember that Antonelli, of course, started this race on soft tyres as he comes out behind Lawson. And that is his second pit stop, so that'll help Oscar Piastri. So Antonelli now down to 6th place. Antonelli's got a lot of work to do if he's to finish on the podium. I don't see Antonelli finishing on the podium. Antonelli is now, what, about 15 seconds behind Verstappen, who's in 3rd. So he's going to have to catch Max at probably 7 or 8 tenths of a second per lap if he's going to finish in 3rd. As, let me just update that Alonso is in 15th. As Yuki Tsunoda has just pitted. Here comes George Russell, who pits again. Bit surprised by that. I know he went onto the soft tyre, but I don't know. I was expecting him to go to the end for some reason, but there you go. So Piastri now into the podium positions. Russell comes out in 6th as Behrman and Hulkenberg side by side. Ocon, by the way, is just pitted and come out in 14th as Behrman into the slipstream, round the outside, surely gets the move done. Yes, he does. Hulkenberg, he can trust not to understeer straight into him. And Behrman is up to 7th and should probably, well, you still got Liam Lawson out there, so Behrman probably heading for 6th once Lawson either pits or he catches him, because Lawson on pretty old tyres at this point. As we've only got about 20 laps to go. But, yeah, let me just update who's on what tyre compound. Antonelli and Russell on the medium. Behrman on the medium. Hulkenberg is 8th. Albon 9th. They're both on soft tyres. Both still heading for a good result. Remember, they've only pitted once, and they're, I think, I'd say they probably will be both be going to the end on those tyres. So Hulkenberg could very well finish 7th in this Grand Prix. And everyone from 10th down now on the medium tyre. Everyone on the medium except for Norris in the lead, Piastri 3rd, and then Hulkenberg and Albon in 8th and 9th. Norris out front, now 15 seconds clear of Max Verstappen, as Lando Norris now pits. Goes on to a set of mediums that will put Max Verstappen into the lead. And Piastri goes up to 2nd. Well, I hope McLaren have know what they're doing. as Antonelli 4th, now Russell 5th, as Lawson is overtaken. So Max Verstappen, amazingly, with 20 laps to go, Max Verstappen leads the Sao Paulo Grand Prix. But surely there is no way he can win this race. He is, I must say, doing a great job at keeping Piastri at bay. Piastri is lapping at about the same pace as Verstappen. So if you're Red Bull, why not just keep Verstappen out there? As Max saying on the radio, something I didn't think to say. Oh no, this is GP telling Max, something I didn't think to say at the end of the pit lane is, Max, you are now the race leader. As Piastri now told to pit. So they're going to try, they're assuming, sorry, I forgot to tick over to the next lap, so I'll go to lap 52. McLaren, brilliant pit stop there, 2.2 seconds for Piastri. McLaren are assuming that Max is going to pit again. Remember, Verstappen pitted around, I think, was it around the halfway point of this race is when Max pitted? So I think Max can absolutely get to the end, as Piastri now drops to 7th place. I must say, I was not expecting this race to be a 2-stop race. As Isaac Hadjar there, side by side with Stroll, and he goes round the outside. Brilliant overtake, and Hadjar gets up to 10th. Remember, Hadjar's on fresh tyres. He's trying to fight his way back through the field, and now can push on ahead. But Max Verstappen, 7.5 seconds clear of Lando Norris. What are Red Bull going to do? Are they going to respond to that pit stop from Piastri? Or are they going to keep him out there and try and go for the win? If he wins this race, then he's the best of all time. Simple as that. He is an absolute alien if he wins this race, Max. As Carlos Sainz trying or looking to go for a move on Lance Stroll, but wasn't close enough. But yeah, what a mental order we've got with less than 20 laps to go. Max Verstappen amazingly in the lead after starting from the pit lane. Norris 2nd, Antonelli 3rd, Russell 4th, Lawson 5th. Looks like Lawson is either going to do a late second pit stop or he's doing a one-stop race. Behrman 6th, Piastri 7th, Hulkenberg 8th, Albon 9th, Hadjar 10th. As we've got about 18 laps or so to go. As we're now looking at Oscar Piastri right behind Behrman. He's about to overtake Behrman for 6th place. And there you go. Gets the move done. So Piastri up to 6th. As we're looking at Sainz, still trying to overtake Stroll, but can't find a way through. He's trying to put his car on the outside for turn 1 so he can get switched back through turn 2. It's put him in a decent position. Now down to turn 4. Stroll goes to the inside. Sainz for the outside, but doesn't quite get around the outside. The gap between Verstappen and Norris, by the way, 6.8 seconds. Norris is gaining, but not by enough. But Verstappen, sadly, is going to pit and ruin the potential fun of seeing whether Lando could pass Verstappen. Verstappen was not losing as much time to Lando as expected. As we're on lap 55. So Lando Norris returns to the lead Verstappen will be on the soft and will be incredibly quick. As Antonelli second, Russell third. Mercedes at the minute heading for a double podium. As Verstappen will come out just ahead of Lawson, who's got Oscar Piastri right on his tail. Behrman, by the way, is only a couple seconds behind Lawson. So Behrman is nearly there. As Isaac Hadjar is catching Hulkenberg and Albon. It's all going to go off, hopefully, in these final 15 laps. They're all converging as Lance Stroll was pitted and comes out in 16th place. And Verstappen is 14 seconds off the lead with about 16 laps to go. So if he catches Norris at second a lap, as a brilliant move there by Piastri to turn 10 on Lawson up to 5th. If Max catches Lando at second a lap, he will win this race. Surely he can't do that. And remember, he still has to pass Russell and Antonelli in that time if he was to somehow pull that off. Currently, as the championship stands, Lando will be 24 points clear of Piastri. As now Alex Albon has pitted. So presumably Nico Hulkenberg will probably be coming in as well. So this is going to aid Hadjar and Gasly, who obviously were always committed to a two-stop. So Albon comes out 15th on medium tyres. The medium tyre proving to be the best tyre in this Grand Prix today. As Liam Lawson has got Oliver Behrman right on his tail. Still fighting hard is Hadjar and Gasly, now fighting over 9th place. Here comes Behrman down the pit straight. Surely going to get the overtake done. And Lawson doesn't even defend. And Oliver Behrman is up to 6th. Can he get another top 6 finish? And Haas currently heading for 8 points. By the way, keep your eye on Esteban Ocon. Currently in 12th and about 8 seconds away from the points. Ocon pitted not that long ago and is obviously in a pretty quick car. So Ocon might grab a couple points yet for the Haas team. Could be a big points haul for them. Max Verstappen only 12.3 off the lead. As Max being told it's been a fairly vulnerable time, Max, to do your best. And Max saying, yeah, we have nothing to lose. And that is when you are not, that is not a position you want to find yourself in against Max Verstappen, where Max has nothing to lose. On lap 58, he's 12 seconds behind. And if he keeps catching Lando, if he can, I don't know if he's catching him at second a lap, but if he does catch him at second a lap, then he will win this race. But he still has to overtake Russell and Antonelli. I think second very well could be on here, but surely he can't win this race. And remember, Oscar Piastri, not too far behind Verstappen. We need to keep an eye on him as well. Obviously a title contender. But he will be close with the Mercedes cars at the end. And Hulkenberg, by the way, in 8th, is still out there on the soft. So I think Hulkenberg is probably going to try and stay out to the end. Lawson definitely is staying out to the end. Lawson, though, is only 3 seconds clear of Hulkenberg. Be really close between Lawson, Hulkenberg, Hadjar, Gasly, Sainz, Ocon. As Russell saying he's losing a lot of time because of his brakes. As on lap 59, Verstappen has only gained about half a second on Lando Norris on that occasion. So yeah, it's not possible. But second absolutely is. He's only 5 seconds away from second place Antonelli. He can almost see him in the distance. As he's only now 2.5 seconds behind George Russell. As Verstappen continuing also to gain on Norris, but still not by enough. As Albon, further down the order, is just overtaking Colapinto for 14th. Albon, I don't think he's going to finish in the points. I think he's that pit stop has put him a bit too far away. Albon is about 14 seconds away from 10th place Gasly. Well, now 13 seconds, so he's going to have to catch Gasly at probably like a second and a half a lap to have a chance. As we now enter lap 60. Verstappen now 10.3 seconds behind Norris. And only about 1.6 behind Russell. As Alex Albon now right on the back of Alonso. And will he overtake Alonso? Going to dive to the inside? Yes, he will. So Albon up to 13th. Esteban Ocon, by the way, is about 7 seconds, I think, behind Gasly. So I don't think Ocon is going to finish in the points. And neither, I think, will Carlos Sainz. As Hulkenberg is slowly catching Lawson. Got to say, shout out Liam Lawson. What a drive from him. The only driver out there on a one-stop strategy. And he is currently in 7th. And he might just hang on for 7th place in a drive that could save his career in Formula 1. As Verstappen continuing to gain at a vast rate of knots. But still just over a second behind Russell. But I think surely he'll be within a second of Russell at the end of this lap. As they now come down to Jinsao. And Verstappen is, I think, visibly within a second of Russell. But I'm not sure he's going to be able to overtake him. Down to turn 1 as they begin lap 62. As they come down the pit straight, DRS opens. Surely Verstappen is not going to try and send it into turn 1. Can he shape up, though, for a possible move down to turn 4? No, he's too far back. As Verstappen is about 10 seconds off the lead with 10 laps to go. As they come up into the middle sector. Mercedes, I think, are pretty likely to finish on the podium, but it's going to be close because Piastri is catching Russell behind as well. Piastri's only about 4.5 seconds behind Russell. The gap, by the way, also closing between Lawson and Hulkenberg. Hulkenberg only a 1.5 seconds behind Lawson. As here comes Max Verstappen. And I think he's going to have a go this time. Down to turn 1. Russell defends to the inside. Verstappen goes for the outside and has way too much grip and speed and talent. And he gets past. Max Verstappen onto the podium, but can he take second? He's only got another 2.5 seconds to find to Antonelli. What a drive by Max Verstappen. If you don't believe he's the best driver on the grid, after seeing this and all the other incredible drives he's put in this season, then you are insane. This guy is miles clear of the rest. Only he could put in a drive like this from the pit lane to what looks like it's going to be second place. As the crowd goes wild. And now Verstappen centres in on his next target, Antonelli. As we're now on lap 64. As Hulkenberg, by the way, is now within a second of Lawson. Piastri is now within 3 seconds of Russell. Piastri, though, is 6.5 seconds behind Antonelli with, 8 laps to go. So I think Antonelli is pretty likely going to finish third, and Piastri, at best, probably take fourth. And I do hope, to be honest, Antonelli finishes on the podium. He deserves it. He's had a great weekend. He's been right up there consistently every session. And it'd be cruel if he didn't make the podium. And he's clearly been better than his teammate this weekend. And maybe this is a shift in the balance of power at Mercedes. As Hulkenberg still right up behind Lawson. Gasly still right with Isaac Hadjar. Esteban Ocon, by the way, is only about 4.5 seconds behind Gasly in 10th. So Ocon might just be right there in the fight for 10th at the very end of this race. And so could Alex Albon, who's only 6 seconds off 10th with 6 laps or 7 laps to go now. It's all going to kick off as Hulkenberg is now within a second of Lawson. But he's too far back to send it into turn 1. But he's got much better tyres. Lawson, though, has done an incredible job to manage those tyres and still be up in 7th. As Verstappen not gaining that quickly on Antonelli. But he is still gaining. The gap is, I think, just under 2 seconds between Max and Kimi. As Piastri now 1.4 seconds behind Russell. As we enter lap 66 of 71. And the fight continues for the podium. And officially, we've got 6 laps to go. As Hulkenberg right on the back of Lawson again. And they're coming down to turn 1. He's closer on this occasion. Can he get the move done? He doesn't go for it, but he's positioned himself on the outside. Can he get a better run? Surely he can on fresher tyres. And he does through turn 2. And he'll get a phenomenal run down to turn 4. Can the Ferrari power unit power him into 7th? Oh, they got very close. Wheel to wheel. And now side by side up to turn 5. But Lawson keeps ahead. Nice, clean, hard racing. As we are now on lap 67. Only 5 laps remain. As Verstappen only 1.1 seconds behind Antonelli. Piastri about 1.2 seconds behind Russell. As Hulkenberg gets a great run on Lawson out the final corner, and surely Hulkenberg will get this move done, as he's got Hadjar and Gasly right up behind him as well. Lawson, he's done a great job, but he might end up not even finishing in the points. It's going to be so close. He's got to somehow just keep ahead, and he has on this occasion brilliantly as Liam Lawson. As Esteban Ocon has just overtaken Carlos Sainz. Ocon is very close to catching. Yeah, he's what, about 2.5 seconds behind Gasly. So Ocon might just nick a point, an extra point for Haas, which could be vital for them. Lap 68. Here is Verstappen. He's got the DRS, but he's not close enough to overtake yet. But can he get a good run through turn 1 and 2? To maybe ever go at turn 4? No, he's not close enough. Piastri still cannot get within a second of Russell. If he can't finish 4th, that's 2 extra points thrown down the drain. And what's helping Ocon, by the way, is Hulkenberg, Hadjar and Gasly all held up by Lawson, who's really slow. So that's why the pack behind are all catching. There's going to be a massive train behind Liam Lawson on the final lap. But what are some very important positions? Racing Bulls currently heading for 6 points. Haas are heading for 8. Sauber heading for 4 points. Alpine heading for a point. It's all so important. As Verstappen, does he get a good enough exit? No, he does not. Lap 69. 3 laps remain for Verstappen to finish second. These two have rarely gone wheel to wheel so far in their careers. Antonelli did do a great overtake on Verstappen in Bahrain. Max was having quite a lot of car issues though. And down to turn 4, Verstappen closes, but is not close enough. And yeah, from Lawson in 7th down to Albon in 12th, there is only 3.3 seconds covering those cars. It is absolutely mental. I'd love to be seeing some of that, as Piastri has now got within a second of Russell. So we'll keep an eye on that. As through Jinsao, Lawson still just keeping himself ahead of Hulkenberg. Ocon is only about 2 or 3 tenths behind Gasly in the fight for 10th as we begin the penultimate lap. Can Verstappen begin to attempt to get second? And he moves offline to distract Antonelli, but no, Antonelli doesn't fall for it. Piastri doesn't get close enough to Russell to have a go into turn 1. And Max gets close into turn 4, but not close enough. So Max will have a couple final opportunities on the final lap to see if he can take what could be a crucial second place. As I thought I just saw a position change down the order, but I don't think there has been. Oh no, there has been. Isaac Hadjar has passed Hulkenberg. Crucial move for Racing Bulls. Now they just need to tell Hadjar to hold everyone up behind and keep hold of 7th and 8th as we begin the final lap. Can Verstappen take second from Antonelli? They come down to turn 1. Verstappen sends it up the inside, but he's nowhere near Antonelli. What a brilliant drive from Kimi to keep Max behind. Piastri cannot catch Russell. Just doesn't have enough grip. as Albon, out of nowhere, has passed Ocon. Albon might just nick a point on this final lap. He's right behind Pierre Gasly. As Verstappen, Antonelli went a bit wide in turn 9. That's put Max right on his tail. But there's nowhere Max can send it to actually go for an overtake, as Hadjar is up to 7th. Brilliant recovery from Hadjar. As here comes Lando Norris to win the Sao Paulo Grand Prix for the first time. And that could very well be the win that wins him the World Championship. Antonelli, brilliant drive, finishes in 2nd. Max Verstappen, driver of the day by far, finishes in 3rd. George Russell 4th, Piastri 5th. Behrman will finish in 6th. And here we go. Lawson and Hadjar racing. We've got loads of cars racing for these final points paying positions. Lawson's barely got any tyres left. As in the background, Ocon trying to repass Albon for 11th. As Ocon sends it at the final corner, but locks up and thankfully doesn't slide into Alex Albon as they come to the line, and Racing Bulls will finish 7th and 8th. What a drive from Liam Lawson. One of the drives of the day. Made the one-stop strategy work and finishes in 7th. Hadjar 8th. Hulkenberg 9th. Gasly 10th. Albon 11th. Ocon 12th. Sainz 13th. Alonso 14th. Colapinto 15th. Stroll 16th. Tsunoda 17th. And your 3 retirements: Lewis Hamilton, Charles Leclerc, and Gabriel Bortoleto. But Lando Norris, what a crucial win. And I'm just going to say it, Lando Norris is going to win this World Championship. He is now 24 points clear of his nearest rival with just 3 races to go. And Max Verstappen in 3rd is now 49 points behind with 3 races to go. Unless he has a massive bout of bad luck or completely bottles it, Lando Norris surely is going to win this World Championship. What a drive, though, from Antonelli. Hold on a second. Even better from Verstappen. Driver of the day. Absolutely. But shout out Oliver Behrman, Liam Lawson, and all the rest. That was, I thought, a pretty fun Grand Prix. But anyway, let me ask you guys, who is your driver of the day for the Sao Paulo Grand Prix? And I am expecting one driver in particular to win the driver of the day vote, and that is Max Verstappen. And then the other options for driver of the day will be Kimi Antonelli, Lando Norris, and Liam Lawson. For me, Verstappen is definitely driver of the day, but second best driver of the day, I would have to say Liam Lawson. And the reason I keep talking about him is because I really want to give him the credit he deserves and not just forget about that performance. That was such a good performance from Lawson, and crucial for Racing Bulls, who are now 10 points clear of Aston Martin in the championship. Haas are now, they're still in 8th, but they're only a couple points behind Aston Martin. Sauber, a couple points scored for them, and Alpine score a point as well. But that result for Racing Bulls might just allow them to finish in 6th. And also, Racing Bulls not a million miles behind Williams, who are only 30 points up the road. That's not completely over. Yanni saying if they didn't pit Max, it would have been Max Norris Kimi or Norris Max Kimi. If Lando could have caught and passed Max, I would have really loved it if Red Bull had kept Verstappen out on track. because, as you say, he would have at worst finished in second, but I think there's a decent chance he could have won that race. Because, Lando would have been forced to try and overtake Max Verstappen on track, and we know that is a very difficult thing to do, even on fresher tyres. So, I wish they had kept Max out, because that would have been a brilliant showdown. Again, shout out to Oliver Behrman, who I'm just seeing on the broadcast there. 6th place finish. He has become one of the stars on the grid, without a doubt. And Oliver Behrman now up to 13th in the... Is he up to 13th in the championship? No, Oliver Behrman is now up to, I think, 12th in the championship. Or 11th in the championship, I think. One of the two. So Behrman is only a few points away from entering the top 10 of the championship. But yeah. Crystal saying, Kimi drove the day. I'm too used to Max blitzing these kind of races. KH saying Max is the GOAT. And also saying Max did great also. Crystal giving a shout out to Gasly, P10. Great weekend from Gasly. Finishing in 10th. Shame he couldn't finish in 9th. He was right there with Hadjar. If he had managed to pass Hadjar early in the race, he could have finished up in 7th. That's the difference if you don't get overtakes done. So, shame there. But hopefully Alpine can keep up this performance in the final 3 races, because they thankfully looked a lot better this weekend. Obviously, next up is Las Vegas. And we know we can get some crazy races there. And we will obviously be covering that on the channel. I won't be doing a qualifying watch along, but I will definitely be doing a race watch along, even though I'll be probably a bit hungover or just very tired from having stayed up for hours. But no matter what, I'll be there for the race watch along. So make sure to join us for that in 2 weeks' time. The race starts at 4 a.m. here in the UK. So we'll be live, as usual, 2 hours before lights out at 2 a.m. UK time for the build-up and then the watch-along itself. And even though I'm missing qualifying, I will do a qualifying preview on Friday night, which I'll do it at a time that's a lot better suited for us. So we can go through qualifying at least. But yeah, that'll be coming up on the channel. And of course, remember, I will be doing a podcast, which will come out tomorrow night, where I'll review the events of this Grand Prix. But yeah, make sure to check that out. And then, yeah, hopefully I'll see you guys for the Las Vegas Grand Prix. But I think I'll finish the poll results, even though we've only had about 24 votes, because it's pretty obvious who has won the poll. 24 votes, Max Verstappen wins it with 67% of the vote, and then Antonelli and Norris 17%. No votes for Liam Lawson, sadly, but for me, he was stunning today. Nib saying, at least for that race, I can laugh at you for having to be up so late for once, because nothing else will make me happy in that race. Yeah, it's a shame how things have turned out, but we'll see what happens in Vegas. But yeah, cheers for you guys coming along for the stream today and for the streams this weekend. Like I said, podcast tomorrow will be out tomorrow night reviewing this race, and then there'll be no content on the channel until the night before qualifying in Las Vegas, and that will be the 21st of November, where on that Friday night, on the 21st, I'll be doing a qualifying preview stream, where what we'll do is what we do in a qualifying build-up on the qualifying watch-along, we'll do on that preview stream. And then, obviously, we'll see what happens in qualifying, but I won't be, obviously, covering it. And then, like I said, race watch along Sunday, the 23rd of November in 2 weeks. We'll be live at 2 a.m. UK time for a 4 a.m. UK time start for the race watch along. If you can't make it for the race, though, remember, as usual, there'll be a podcast on Monday night reviewing the Las Vegas Grand Prix. And then, of course, after that, Qatar and Abu Dhabi, the final 2 races of the season. We've only got 3 more races to go, which is sad to say, but yeah, the Formula 1 season nearly at a close. But thank you guys so much for coming along. Make sure to smash the like button before you go. Subscribe to the channel for more content like this if you are new. And until my podcast reviewing this race tomorrow, and until the next Grand Prix on the calendar, the Las Vegas Grand Prix. Until then, guys, it has been me, Chazza HD. Goodbye.